باسم الاب والروح القديس وحاد الله شرير آمين.
Everyone, today we're going to be doing our part 3 response to Craig's stream. A couple announcements. I was asked to respond to Ubi Petrus. He made a new stream or something. So we're going to keep that on the wait list. We'll deal with that later after this series. This is going to be one of the last episodes. I don't think we'll have enough time to finish everything here. Today, we're joined by familiar faces, Sabdik and Daniel, Moss, Simple, Schismatic, and a new face, Dike Mehret, on this series. We always have Dike Mehret on the channel, and we thought he'd be able to pitch in some nice information for this part. If you guys want to say hi, any announcements?
Good to be
Anything?
back. Blessed to be here, my brother.
Yeah, just real quick on the Ubi Petrus thing. A lot of people are saying like respond. A bunch of his so-called points we have already addressed on the stream. Maybe there's one or two missing things. I was a little confused because half of the stream wasn't even about us. It was about Orthodox dating, or I don't even know what he was talking about. So that is to come. But like for now, let's focus on completely finishing, because this stream is pretty comprehensive and already addresses most of the things we have already talked about with Craig. So I just wanted to say that real quick.
Someone in the comments said, can you guys address the thrice summons? We did that in stream 1. We talked about it, but very quickly. The thrice summons was issued by Eusebius of Durelium. Eusebius of Durelium was by this time a schismatic and a heretic because he was deposed at Ephesus 449. Leo unilaterally restored the people deposed in 449. But they were all collegially or officially restored within the Eastern Orthodox worldview in the later sessions. Dioscorus' deposition was in session 3. So even by their own standards, they either have to appeal to the papacy in order to make sense of Dioscorus' deposition, or they have to recognize the one who is doing these was a schismatic. And according to Apostolic Canon 75, which is the canon right after 74, 74 basically says, if someone is thrice summoned by men worthy of credit, specifically men worthy of credit, and they don't show up, they're anathematized. The next canon after that, it says a heretic cannot be a witness against the bishop. And Eusebius' whole plaint is built on the premise that he was a witness to injustices at Ephesus too. So the thrice summons is bogus. The canon says it has to be done by men worthy of credit. The canon right after that tells you who it can't be, a heretic, which is exactly what Eusebius of Durelium was. There was no formal process in sessions 1 and 2 where Eusebius and Durelium were collegially restored by a proper synod. That never happened. So that's that. Someone asked why he lied about his illness. That's a very loaded question. What's the evidence he lied? I mean, we have eyewitness in 454 explaining exactly what happened when Dioscorus was on arrest. He was abused and he was injured. The first time they asked him to show up, he said the soldiers wouldn't let him. And that's a truth. They had to go get permission in order to let Dioscorus out. So the very first thing Dioscorus said, where Eusebius later said he was making excuses, the council already concedes, yeah, Dioscorus was telling the truth. They needed to get permission. So the same applies for him saying he's ill or sick. Or the Greek would just render it unhealthy, and we know why. The history of Dioscorus, written in 454 by a disciple of his, gives us those eyewitness accounts of what exactly happened to Dioscorus.
Yep.
The entire
The
entire trial we covered extensively in part 1, so make sure after this stream to go back and watch it. And of course, if you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comments.
How about, sorry, I'm sick because of how bad those videos are that we're responding to. How about Christ Seeker? Why don't you ask the question, why is Dioscorus on trial in the first place? For what? And by what authority? You're gonna have to eventually see. You'll have to choose between us and papism.
Exactly.
Yeah. And again, we addressed this all in part 1. We went it fully, like no reason Dioscorus was deposed and why was he deposed and all this. Moss, if you want to get into the video, we can't help you, bro. We can't help you.
Just a warning before you watch this. There is a lot of rage bait material here. We're gonna be tempted to pause at every second. So, and this is a warning to subdeacon, Agen, deacon, and simple. So please be patient. All right, but I think we're ready to watch now. I'm gonna share my screen.
All right, so now let's continue with John of Tella. I want to emphasize, he made no episcopal consecrations, and there were no other bishops joining him. Any consecrations outside of his own jurisdiction without synodical approval are uncanonical. Canons are clear on this.
Okay, so he's already lying on John of Tella. I think we can tackle two birds with one stone here. Simple, do you mind telling us a little bit about John of Tella while also refuting this small point?
Yeah. Excuse me, real quick here. For John of Tella, when the period of persecution had lasted about,
And sorry, I hate to cut you off, but
go for it.
right now this is from John of Ephesus, Lives of the Eastern Saints. He was a contemporary, a historian, and a biographer. Continue.
Yep. Yeah. So as John states, like when the period of persecution had lasted about 10 years, the rest of the believers everywhere were in difficulties about ordination, and they began to have recourse to the believing bishops. Then all the bishops assembled together and then tried to figure out what are they going to do. Although the bishops realized the urgent need for non-Chalcedonian sacraments, they hesitated to ordain priests who could supply the sacraments to the laity, because if they did so, then the Chalcedonians would persecute them because there was a growing majority of them, and then they would fear the resistance. So John of Tella resisted the majority and requested a mandate from Severus of Antioch himself and the other bishops to ordain bishops at his own risk. He received the license from the bishops and Severus, and thus became the main force behind the ordinations. It wasn't just himself, it wasn't on his own authority, but it was with the group. So there was a standard behind it. So we have a quote here, specifically again from John of Ephesus, that says, "Hundreds of people came to him like a flooded river that has hearsed its hanks. Every day 50, 100, and sometimes as many as 200 or 300 men came to him for ordination. All those produced were examined and reading the scriptures and reciting the Psalms, and obliged before acceptance to show some evidence of literacy. Candidates came from as far afield as Armenia, Phoenicia, Cappadocia, Azarin on the Persian frontier." And John of Ephesus estimates that John of Tella ordained 170,000 priests and deacons. So
Sorry. So this should give you a sense of a couple of things. Number one, how much Orthodox clergy was needed to be ordained. Number two, how many laity in the East were willing and waiting to be ordained in spite of these persecutions. And drawing from these, number three, the amount of Orthodox believers in the East for there to be the sheer amount of ordinations. Yet in spite of all of these numbers, these ordinations did not nearly have as much of an effect in restoring the Orthodox populace as the end of the persecutions did. And we have a quote from Volker Menze. This is what he says on John of Tella's Profession of Faith. "At the beginning of the 530s, the position of the non-Chalcedonians in the East was quite strong, not the least because of John of Tella's undertakings. After the first waves of persecutions were over, the non-Chalcedonians managed to reestablish a non-Chalcedonian church life and at least partially return to the cities." Let's continue.
Principle 1 states, the bishops are not to go beyond their diocese to churches lying outside of their bounds, nor bring confusion on the churches, and let not the bishops go beyond their diocese for ordination or any other ecclesiastical ministrations unless they be invited.
Unless they be invited. We have already said that John of Tella received consent from Saint Severus as well as the other bishops. Let's continue.
So we know they're not allowed to, but the question is, are these nullified, or do we need like a synodical judgment against these people for it to be nullified? Or in other words, it's bad to do it, but until you are actually judged guilty, you're not guilty of the crime. What you're going to find is these aren't just bad, they are null and void. They were never good to begin with. The canons are clear on this. Let's continue.
Also, I want to add, as Simple said, John of Tella was not on his own. From Elias, Live of John of Tella, Brooks's edition, we know at least Thomas of Dara, Sergius of Cyrus, Marian of Sura, and Nonus of Circesium by name who aided John in his ordinations. So Craig is just blatantly lying at this point. John of Tella was not alone, and he was with other bishops, and he received permission from Saint Severus as well as other bishops, different bishops than the ones who aided him.
Apostolic Canons 34 and 35. Bishops of every nation must acknowledge him who is first among them and account him as their head, and do nothing of consequence without his consent.
Without his consent.
But each must do those things only which concern his own parish and the country places which belong to it, but neither let him who is the first do anything without the consent of all. And Canon 35, let not a bishop dare to ordain beyond his own limits in cities and places not subject to him. But if he be convicted of doing so without the consent of those persons who have authority over such cities and places, let him be deposed, and those also whom he has ordained. Someone could say, well, that's not null and void. That just means like a synodical judgment against these people for it to be nullified. Or in other words, it's bad to do it, but until you are actually judged guilty, you're not guilty of the crime. What you're going to find is these aren't just...
Sorry, so Deacon, I just saw your comments. You're muted.
It's funny, these guys, they do it about us, this. How come they don't do this for the Uniates? How come they don't do it for the Maronites? How come they're not saying the Uniates or the Maronites orders anything? Why are they doing it about us? Or the Church of the East? But they're doing it about us because we're the legit ones. They're trying to validate themselves by doing this again. They didn't pick any of the other claimants. They only picked us. I've never seen any of these ortho bros, Eastern Orthodox apologists online do it about them. It's always on us every time.
I feel like it's easier to make up the facts when it's people that have no connection to. Can you go to the next slide that Craig was showing? I want to point out Canon 34.
The next or the previous?
The next, because you went backwards.
They are null and void. They were never good to begin with. The canons are clear on this. Let's continue. Apostolic Canons 34 and 35.
Yeah, so he's trying to make the point here. Apostolic Canon 34 says that you can't really do anything without consent. I think you're going to make a point on that, Moss, before we kind of went backwards.
So I made a point previously. He received consent, and we have even more quotes to show. But if you want to add anything, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, first he's making an argument with no facts that he didn't have consent, right? Like it was just silent. He just went rampant bishop doing things. But the canon here is rebuking you if you do something against consent of whatever bishop there is there. So which is it? Is it he just did it rampantly, or was he violating someone else's wishes? He has to demonstrate that from primary sources.
Yeah. And this is the second time Craig is trying to pull a stunt like this, right? If we remember on the topic of the thrice summons, right? He was quoting a whole bunch of canons referring to the thrice summons, but he's completely ignoring the caveat. What's the caveat? That the men have to be worthy of credit. Same situation here. And you guys will see in the rest of the canons that he quotes, the caveat here is that the bishop of the city needs to give consent. But he's completely ignoring all of this.
I forgot to say this in part 1, and even when we started the stream, about the men worthy of credit thing. The only other place that Greek phrase is found is in the book of Proverbs. It's a whole chapter about right versus wrong. And it says what makes you not a man worthy of credit. Murdering, lying, and stealing. Okay? Murdering, lying, and stealing. And that's what we find the Chalcedonian party doing exactly.
Right. I was going to exactly that. So without the permission, he keeps saying this. So what about when you kill us? What about that? What about when you kill our bishops who are already there? Who was the bishop of Mabuch? Philoxenos. What happened to him? What about the patriarch of Antioch, Severus? What happened to him? So then when they are giving permission to go, is because their sees have been hijacked and there are imposters sitting there after.
Yeah, this is really like, this is what Craig's trying to do. Is using his past church's how do I word it, impieties, in order to draw conciliar contradictions. For example, you guys don't have majority. Let's say we didn't. Hypothetically. Why? What led to that series of events? Oh, I don't know. Your church murdering us. Okay. He's relying that fundamentally. This is what's going on in his mind, but he'll never say it. He is happy these things happened. These misfortunes happened because based on them, plus Craig's extra lies, he can now try and attempt to draw conciliar contradictions. See, so we're going to murder you guys. Oh, no more majority, right? We're going to get rid of your bishops. Oh, they can't really consent to what's going on, right? He's happy with this. He's happy with all of these immoral impieties going on by his church because for him, it makes their case. But here's the proof of our church now. The proof of our church is despite all of this, Craig has to pull things out of a hat like he's a magician. Severus, he got the fairy flu and decided to abdicate. Same with Timothy and Theodosius. They got a magical fairy who came from Rakote and told them to stop fighting for the faith. And now, you can just voluntarily abdicate. Or you don't have consent. He doesn't give primary sources for any of this.
Yeah. I just want to say really quickly, keep this part in mind because he'll repeat this slander over and over again that we didn't have anyone with St. Jacob Bardes, and he'll say he didn't have anyone supporting him. So remember this, he didn't have anyone supporting him, and he went around just ordaining bishops of his own accord. So just remember this part for now.
Yeah, it's really like if you guys watch part 2, like pay attention when I start talking about ISIS. Because it really is that. Like, this is exactly what they did to us.
Repeat it again for new people here.
Yeah,
What did ISIS do?
When ISIS took over their state, or whatever you want to call it, they removed all the scholars who were against them. So they had Majlis Shura, which is like the authoritative body to decide on the law, the Sharia. And there was only their guys. So then when there would be outside, like in England or whatever, the da'wah guys are talking about it, and there's pro-ISIS, anti-ISIS, and they're like, the pro-ISIS side would say, like, well, they're the majority, and the rule is that whatever the majority is, they're the majority because they killed everybody. Yeah. So it's the same thing that they did to us, the Chalcedonians. It's the same thing.
Now, I want to add, even in those cases, like with ISIS, there is a clear majority. Even in these cases, there isn't one. He's just going off the fact because murdering happens, and usually murder and, persecution leads to X and Y bishops going away, disappearing, dying, whatever it may be. He's now drawing faulty conclusions where the primary sources don't list it. He's assuming things that aren't there. Because the bishops all died, no one could give their consent. Right? But he doesn't have sources for any of this.
Yeah, great points. Let's continue seeing the rest of the canons that Craig quotes and then address all of them at the end.
Bishops of every nation must acknowledge him who is first among them and account him as their head and do nothing of consequence without his consent. But each must do those things only which concern his own parish and the country places which belong to it. But neither let him who is the first do anything without the consent of all. And Canon 35, let not a bishop dare to ordain beyond his own limits in cities and places not subject to him. But if he be convicted of doing so without the consent of those persons who have authority over such cities and places, let him be deposed, and those also whom he has ordained. Someone could say, well, that's not null and void. That just means they're judged. Canon 9 of Antioch, which was the jurisdiction, by the way, not only does this have pan-Orthodox acceptance, but this is the jurisdiction, after all, that Donatello is working in. It is proper for the bishops in every province to submit to the bishop who resides in the metropolis, for he must consider the whole province, because businessmen from every corner of the provinces gather in the metropolis. So that's the patriarchy. It is decreed, therefore, that the bishop of the metropolis has top precedence and rank. Other bishops may take no extraordinary action without his consent, as the canon passed down to us at the time of our fathers direct. So it literally cites the apostolic canon. Then may only do such things and involve their own parishes and districts subject to them. Let him undertake nothing further without the bishop of the metropolis, nor the latter without the consent of the others. So we need the patriarch's acceptance for these consecrations to exist, and they did not have that. There wasn't even a patriarch of Antioch after Severus.
Can you please pause? I'm sorry we keep pausing, but
no problem.
What Craig is doing here gives the false impressions that he's ran through these arguments before. So like he's like trying to establish the base, as if the major of his argument that there was no consent with John of Tella is already firmly established. So he's pretending as if our rebuttal is going to be, oh, well, look, here's the thing, Craig. Even though that's the case, it doesn't mean that the ordinations are null. It just means it was bad. That's not our argument, Craig. Who are you trying to refute? He's giving this false impression as if he's already ran through this discussion and therefore is finding the best version of this refutation and dealing with it, the straw man, and therefore, look, they have no way to respond to this. But notice how every single canon he cited said, it's not allowed unless there's consent. Very quick and simple. Very quick and simple, Moss. Did John Tell have consent?
Oh, you're asking me. Of course, yes, and we'll quote, yes.
So notice he doesn't establish his major. He did that every time with Severus abdicating. Theodosius going on vacation because they said they were going to kill him and not persecute him, whatever that means. All of these, things that are building his argument, and he runs off some tangential point we're not even going to bring up. He's refuting something that nobody ever said. I just want to make that clear. If we can chop, wrap it up, because I'm getting very impatient. Not with any of you guys, my brother. Sorry. With Craig, he's refuting things nobody's saying as if it's, God himself descended in a burning bush and told him there was no consent.
Let's continue. See if we can
Canon 13 of Antioch. No bishop
this.
should presume to travel from one province to another and ordain people to the ministry of the church, not even if he has other clergy with him without the written permission of the metropolitan bishop and lesser bishop of the country he enters. So meaning you can't go there, like Canon 2 Constantinople 1 states, and start consecrating people without permission, like Donatello was doing.
Notice, okay, now he's claiming that John of Tella did not have permission.
If without invitation he does meddle in the ordinations and church affairs of provinces that are not under his responsibility, then anything he has done is nullified. Anything he has done is nullified. There's no effect.
Last thing I'll stretch on this point. I'm so sorry, guys. You have to listen through all this. Craig is doing this on purpose. It's a tactic. When you put all of your effort, right, rebutting a potential rebuttal, it makes it seem as if the whole thing the argument is built upon is like a pre-established fact everyone agrees with. He's doing it on purpose. This isn't a coincidence. Where you go after and spend considerable amount of time refuting the weaker, rebuttals to the weaker point, right? So let's say his argument has a strong point, the thing that establishes the argument, and then weaker point. He's spending 15 or so minutes defending rebuttals no one ever made to his weaker point instead of establishing the veracity of the major point. Let's continue. Sorry, I want everyone to know what's happening.
Should be punished properly for this irregularity in a proper undertaking. He should immediately be deposed by the Holy Council. The importance of that is you can't say, well, we need a council to judge these ordinations as invalid, because that canon actually states, no, the ordinations are null and void, and the person doing it must now go to a trial. So it actually differentiates between the two. So those consecrations are null and void. They're not just non-canonical, they are non-existent. Canon 19 of Antioch. Only a council held in the presence of the metropolitan bishop may ordain a bishop. So you need the patriarch. Furthermore, it is best to do this when all the brothers in the ministry of the province gather together with the metropolitan bishop. He should therefore send them all letters.
By the way, I just want to quickly pause. If you guys remember, it was Craig himself who said John of Tella didn't ordain any bishops. So the fact that he's quoting Canon 19 of Antioch, which is specifically talking about the ordination of bishops, like he's grasping at straws. He's completely desperate to make his argument bloated. Let's continue.
The invitation, it is best if all can meet. However, if this is impossible, I mean, like, you can't get everyone in the same room, it is imperative that a majority either be present or take part in the election by letter. So you need a majority, by letter or otherwise. You need a majority. In this way, the decision will be made by the consent of the majority. If anything takes place contrary to these decrees, such action here is hereby nullified. Canon 22 of Antioch. A bishop should not go to a city outside his own jurisdiction to appoint priests or deacons to places outside his control, like Donatello, unless he has the consent of the area's proper bishop. Anything a bishop does without authorization in a province outside his jurisdiction is void. In addition, a council must punish such action. So clearly, holy orders made in violation of the canon are nullified and void, never existed. The bishop's punishment is not optional, it is a mandatory prescription. But punishment awaits trial and is not automatic like nullification. So before you say, again, this is eisegesis, we have Oriental Orthodox canon law today reiterating the same thing, at least in part. We have this in the Feth and Agest about priest consecrations. If a bishop ordains a priest outside the jurisdiction of the see without the consent of the holder of that see, let him be deposed. If a bishop ordains foreigners, i.e. those outside the jurisdiction, of his own will, meaning doesn't exclude doing so at the consent of the synod. So like you could do it as long as you have the consent of the synod. The holy orders of those whom he ordained shall be null and he shall be deposed. So this idea of null holy orders is in Oriental Orthodox canon law, but in Feth and Agest, only applies to priest consecrations. It's worth pointing out that the Canons of Antioch clearly are accepted by the Syriac Orthodox today. So I'm not saying this is anything new, but this idea of null holy orders isn't my invention. It's also in Ethiopian Orthodox canon law. Concerning Episcopal elections, it just states, he, the bishop, must have the approval of the people over whom he is appointed and the approval of the patriarch. If someone desires the episcopal office and has the approval of all the people of the city, but not that of the metropolitan of his province, he's not allowed to be bishop without the approval of the metropolitan. If he transgresses this, the council shall excommunicate him and he shall be deposed from the episcopal office. But if the majority of the people support him and he receives the approval of the metropolitan and the patriarch, the choice of the majority shall prevail. All right.
All right, we're finally done with that. So,
Yeah.
like, Craig very clearly made his point, right? Simple. You want to tell us very quickly what's his point, just in 1 or 2 sentences?
Yeah, his point was basically like John of Tella went out of his jurisdiction as a so-called bishop and ordained people without permission and without the majority. That was basically his point, and all of which is completely a fabrication.
Yes, and we can easily refute this, right? Did he have jurisdiction, or did he have permission from the bishops who did? Yes,
Yes.
he did.
No,
And we're gonna
guys,
quote.
Craig said no. Craig said no.
Oh, we're done. So
No,
this
on
is from
no sources.
Christ and Christian Tradition, Volume 2, Part 3. John of Tella / Constantina was active after he was exiled on the Persian border. The other bishops authorized him to ordain priests where? In their sees. And so he traveled, instructed, and ordained many clergy. Not looking good for you. And we'll continue. This is from E.W. Brooks. And many, when they had seen the power and zeal of his soul, ran to him from every side, from villages and from cities into the desert where his assembly was. And in churches and monasteries he made priests, with all scrutiny and accurately and diligence, because by the holy patriarch Severus and the metropolitans and bishops who had fled into distant regions, they had received letters and license. And these holy men gave them license by these very letters of making priests in their cities and their territories. And he liberated many of them from the communion of the heretics. Like, are we serious now? You know, it makes me mad how easy, like, he spent 10 minutes, you know, rambling and quoting this.
What did I tell you?
You know, it takes, you know, open a history book, right? So now that we've vindicated St. John of Tella against, you know, this baseless accusation of violating the canons, let's give Craig a taste of his own medicine, shall we? Let's not remove our eyes from the canons just yet. Craig wants to play the canon game. Let's play the canon game. Let's put the Melkites in our crosshairs. Simple. Let's rotate. So you list the canon, how it's violated. I'll do the same. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sure. And before this, Agen, can I stream? I have these cannons up just so everybody can follow along.
Yes.
All right. 1 sec. Here we go. All right. Let's start with apostolic.
Are these in order?
Yeah. Well, in order with how we're gonna say it. The first ones
Okay.
are
Sounds good.
from the
No
other
problem.
one,
No problem.
Yeah. So we're the second one on the slide, or Apostolic Canon 6 says, "Let not a bishop, presbyter, or deacon undertake worldly business; otherwise, let him be deposed." Which Chalcedonian patriarchs have we talked about in part 2 that were military commanders, even when they were patriarchs? Let me think. I don't know. Agen, can you list one maybe?
You tell me. I have a canon to supply this.
Yeah. Ephraim. Do you guys remember Ephraim? I know I saw some people compare him to Star Wars. I don't know what the comparison was, but Ephraim was something called the Comes Orientis. And this is the count or governor of the East. Is this not undertaking worldly businesses? I don't know.
I want to add.
Go ahead.
Nicaea calls him a dog. That's not my words. It's not my words. If everyone knows the canon I'm talking about, canon 12.
Yes.
As many as were called by grace and displayed the first zeal, having cast aside their military girdles, but afterwards returned like dogs to their own vomit, so that some spent money and by means of gift regained their military stations. let these, etc., tells us how to do penance. And I think you can guess you're not allowed to do that from the canons of
Yes.
Nicaea.
And Apostolic Canon 81 says the same thing. We have said that a bishop or presbyter must not give himself to the management of public affairs, but devote himself to ecclesiastical businesses. Let him then be persuaded to do so, or let him be what? Let him be deposed, for no man can serve two masters. Right? Is being the governor of the entire East, does that sound like undertaking worldly businesses to you? It sure does to me, right? And in Alexandria, we had several Melkite patriarchs who were either connected with military power, Paul and Apollinarius. Apollinarius we'll discuss later, as well as from a military background, like John IV, and Cyrus, who was not only from a military background, but he was also the governor of Egypt, or the Praefectus Aegypti, and he also handed Egypt over to the Muslims, which we'll cover later. Right? So being a general, being a soldier, is that not partaking in worldly businesses? Right? And if you argue otherwise, we have a canon that says, Apostolic Canon 83, if a bishop shall serve in the army and wishes to retain both the Roman magistracy and the priestly office, let him be deposed, for the things of Caesar belong to Caesar, and those of God to God. You simple? List some more canons for us.
Yeah, I mean, next one. We got Apostolic Canon 30. If any bishop obtains possession of a church by the aid of temporal powers, let him be deposed and excommunicated, and all who communicate with him. Now, of course, our favorite so-called Coptic patriarch, Proterius, is the first violator. With the exception of, and this is from the Story of the Copts, really good book, it says that with the exception of a few churches forcefully taken and given over to the emperor to the supporters of Chalcedon, all the churches were closed. Proterius, mindless of the people or their feelings, proceeded to despoil the churches relegated to him and his partisans. And then Paul of Tabernacus, I probably slaughtered that, but he's back for this as well. He says he obtained an order from Justinian to close all Monophysite churches. Monophysites dared to build 2 new churches, but the old ones were reserved for Chalcedonians. And then Michael the Syrian even records in his chronicle, Domitian of Melitene, the Chalcedonian nephew of Emperor Maurice, and a saint for the Melkites, who was an archbishop, so-called, extending his activities into the province of Mesopotamia, outside of his jurisdiction, by the way. I thought we didn't like that, Craig. Where monasteries and churches of the Syrians, or the Syriac Orthodox at the time, were seized and handed over to the Chalcedonians. And we can keep going, but look, like right here, right? And they always say like, oh, you guys got gifted churches. You guys stole churches with the emperor. Your Saint Justinian said, close down all of their churches. It breaks all of the canons here. Are we okay with that? I don't know.
We can also add Juvenal to this as well. I mean, he was able to come back to Jerusalem and take possession of those churches because he was aided and escorted by military troops. That sounds like an aid of temporal powers to me.
Yeah. And we have more accusations of them breaking the canons. We'll save those for later. If anyone wants to add anything, I think we're ready to resume the video.
I want to say, which of your patriarchs didn't obtain the churches by temporal powers?
Great point.
Yeah.
All right. Do you mind sharing the stream?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
So the quote also from that, Fathin against again, a bishop shall not go into any other place other than which he is appointed, either because his country, diocese, is great or small in size, or because there is a scarcity of canon law.
We
So
could
the
just
emphasis of
skip
this one is
this, I
specifically,
think.
all right, emphasis, who was, we have more evidence that this is not eisegesis. I'm going to quote John of Ephesus, who was the court non-Chalcedonian patriarch of Ephesus, all right? And he wrote the following about the canons. He says, the synodical bishops gathered around him, John, and said to him, what canon law? Oh, wait, I'm thinking of a different John. John Attella here, forgive me. John Attella admits to violating the canons in his hagiography, which is preserved by the non-Chalcedonians. He said the synodical bishops gathered around him, John, and said to him, what canon law allows you to do the thing you are doing? John Attella said to them, when there's a state of confusion such as this, the church does not observe the exactitude of the canons. And so we see an acceptance that yes, there's a parallel program of consecrations. This parallel program is non-canonical. It's
Told
not
you
binding.
guys.
This is admitted in
Look,
non-Chalcedonian.
see how he coughed? He got me sick.
Yeah.
Sources that even honor their saints. But his rationale here: the church does not observe the exactitude of the canons. This can apply to disciplines. We are fungible disciplines all the time. Doesn't mean the disciplines change, but in times of emergency, they could be dispensed with, or at least altered in a canonical fashion, but not to nullifications, right? Like you don't have something nullified, but because it is a really tough time, it becomes not void, right? If it's void, it's always void. Otherwise, the latter would require trials, right? If nullifications didn't apply automatically, they would need a trial, but they don't. Canons don't require a trial for nullifications. They require those trials for those that make void holy orders.
All right, so Craig's next claim is that John of Tella himself admitted to violating these canons regarding the ordination of clergy. And so he's taken this claim from notorious Jonathan Moss. It's unfortunate I have to share that same name. So Jonathan Moss's whole thesis is that John of Ephesus and Elias fabricated their biographies and that they wrote what they wanted John of Tella to do rather than what he actually did, and that John of Tella acted against the wishes of St. Severus. Needless to say, Moss is filled with fantastical opinions and theories not held by any other scholars. Like, we touched briefly one on St. Severus believing gender is fluid and whatever, all these things, right? So let's not dwell on his character for too long, but rather let's focus on this alleged citation he provides.
Well,
so,
Moss,
go ahead.
Moss is very liberal in a lot of things. So, like, he tries to make the argument that because of how Severus's understanding of the state, the Roman Empire, that is influencing his understanding of ecclesiology, and that he's viewing the empire as the kingdom of God, and so the church has to be functioning within the state, and like he's just kind of coming to this analysis on his own. It's not based in any of Severus. It's Moss is putting this on Severus and then pushing it. So any scholar of Severus or student of Severus, whenever they're reading, Moss is going to be the last. Moss and what's her name?
Pauline Allen?
No, the girl who did the 3 Monophysite Christologies.
I know you're talking about. Forgot her name.
Yeah,
I forgot her name, but I know you're talking about
that one. Her and Moss are the last two.
Is it
Roberta Bondi?
Chestnut. Roberta Chestnut. Yeah.
Okay.
Roberta Chestnut and Jonathan Moss. They're the last two that anybody would care what they say.
Yeah. All right, let's continue. So the alleged citation provided by Moss is Elias, Life of John of Tella, Brooks's edition, and Ganem's translation. So we actually pulled the original Syriac text, and we also pulled a translation by Anthony Alcock. So simple. And this is a pretty long section, so bear with us, but it's very beautiful. Do you mind reading the broader context regarding Tella's alleged admission of violating the canons?
Yeah,
just bear with us. This is quite a long thing, but it's very beautiful. Go ahead. And I believe Subdeacon, you read an excerpt of it. I hope I'm saying that word right. But anyway, simple. Read for us.
Right. So I'll just quote it here from Anthony Alcock on his book on John of Tella. But he says, the Marspan sent him to a place where he was locked up. He thought that he was about to receive a bribe. One of the men came and said to him, "If you have anything to give, for we know that you have been unjustly arrested, we will release you and you can escape." The saint replied, "Truly, even if the Roman emperor himself were to come and arrest me and order me to flee, I would not. I have nothing, and with the help of God, I fear no one." After he had spent 30 days in Nisbis, Ephraim sent an agreement to the Persians. They accepted it and handed John over to the Romans. He was then taken to Dara with a large force and was handed over at the border, where he spent 5 days in prison. Mamas, the bishop of Dara, worked strenuously on Ephraim's behalf, together with all who were pleasing to man, but not to God, that he may obey them and agree to what he wanted. After many arguments, he said to them, "You are wrongly forcing people against their will to obey what is not true, i.e. Chalcedon, so that God will desert you because you seek to please man and not God, Ephraim and not the truth." And because Ephraim was about to arrive at Resnia, and as he thought, to ensnare John and many others in his nets, the Marsban stopped him en route, and he was brought there with many Romans. And when Ephraim entered, the bishops present, who were told of his arrival, gathered to stop him and said, "Why are you doing all of this? Why have you caused so much trouble to the church? Why do you not lead a private life like your colleagues? Which law allows you to do as you have done?" He said to them, "When the church is in turmoil, it does not scrupulously observe the laws. As you know and are able to learn, how scrupulous was the one of blessed memory and holy martyr Eusebius, bishop of Samosata, in the things he did when the Arian fanatics held the church, or the great Athanasius, or others like them." They replied, "Be silent about matters that cannot help you. Now just obey the patriarch, and he will cancel and forgive everything, and you will return home in honor and glory." He said, Did you hear what I said? You can leave, depart, and weep over your sins. Do not weep for me. No one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God, according to the teaching of our Savior. On the following day, they summoned him by messenger and told him he was a fraud and troublemaker. He said to them, "Who is disturbing the church of God? I, or those who lead the great armies of Goth and force the people of God violently to submit to all manner of torture? He who clings to truth of constitutional law makes the wealth of the world as in the days of the pagans. When have you seen or heard men entering the church with swords and cudgels? Whom have I deceived, as you said? I who come in from the wilderness to enter a church only rarely. You have gold, you have freedom, you have, one might say, the whole world. You bestow principates and make promises. Howsoever this may be, men flee from you as from enemies. And you say that I have deceived the world, even though I have nothing of what you have. It would rather be more important to obey you who have everything than me who have nothing. If anyone comes to me and asks me about the truth, do you want me to lie? Do I deceive by telling the truth?"
Yeah, so it's truly beautiful. So the context, to provide some context, this is Saint John of Tella held captive by the Persians, um, about to be given to the Byzantines and to Ephraim, and he was challenged by some of the Chalcedonian bishops there, and this is where he's giving these beautiful words. The entire Vita is amazing. I recommend it to be read by all, as St. John of Tella here is really showcasing a perfect example of remaining steadfast in the face of evil and serving God through, upholding the truth rather than succumbing to the pressure of the majority and the end of persecution. But anyways, the point here is to show that there's indication that the law mentioned here refers to there isn't any indication that law here mentioned refers to any particular church canon pertaining to the ordination of clergy. Law is used in a general sense, as in the law of the empire, the law of the land, perhaps, of course, the libellus of Hormisdas. And this is evident by John's response to the accusation that he was a troublemaker, right? He told them that they cling to the truth of the constitutional law. And the same word here is used through the accusation of canon law. So in either case, the lack of any indication or reference to any one of the canons Craig cited is proof that Moss and Craig alike are merely reading their own eisegesis into the text in order to push their predetermined narrative. However, and I want to say, even if we grant them their reading and their interpretation of law to specifically be referring to the church canons regarding the ordination of clergy, so even if we concede this point for argument's sake, no issues arise, because St. John of Tella references St. Eusebius of Samosata, which is precedence for this very thing in the early church, And don't worry, and we will discuss Saint Eusebius of Samosata extensively in the next portion. But keep his name in mind for now. Would anyone like to add anything very quickly?
Just really quickly, I hope I didn't lose you guys with that giant quote, but when you were listening, or if you plan to re-listen to it, like, even if you plan to read it, that quote right there, what does it remind you of, right? Does it remind you of an imperial power who forces everyone to believe what they believe in, right? By even if they don't actually believe in it, or the martyrs of the early church who, like Saint George, would spend 7 years being persecuted, and the pagans would persecute him, and they would say, look, you are deceiving the people with your suffering, and he has nothing, and he still died for the body of Christ, the one body of Christ. So that is what we need to take away from this, even as important as how canonical John of Tella is. He suffered for it, and they had everything, and he had nothing. So yeah, just really quickly, I want to highlight that. So let's keep going.
All right, let's continue into Saint Jacob Baradaeus, I believe.
Yes.
That's worth pointing out. Now, Jacob Baradai and
What a crazy title.
Orthodoxy today. Now, Theodosius, to quote Haywood, like Severus, was reluctant to jeopardize possible ecclesiastical unity by establishing a rival hierarchy, right? Again, they were hoping for a comeback. In 542, however, when the Arab leader Al-Harith approached Theodora asking for 2 anti-Chalcedonian bishops to be consecrated for the critical border areas with Persia, events took a significant turn. Jacob Baradai was consecrated for Mesopotamia and Syria, and Theodora for Arabia and Palestine. Both bishops began ordaining men to the priesthood and to minor orders. It was only in 557 that they progressed the consecration of bishops. All right, so what we see here is that these men were supposed to be creating priests and not bishops in areas pretty much outside of Roman jurisdiction with the border with the Persians. And this is important because the border areas lacked bishops or were controlled by Nestorians and schisms. Jacob and Theodore were sent to somewhere effectively outside of Antioch's jurisdiction. So these were, though I would say not very charitably to the Assyrians, not considered parallel episcopacies by Theodora. And so canonically, who has jurisdiction over these areas? Let's read Canon 2 of Council 1. But the churches of God in heathen nations must be governed according to the custom which has prevailed from the time of the fathers. It doesn't say the custom. The custom is you could evangelize it. It's like a no man's land. It's what America is today, why we have 15 jurisdictions. You could pretty much go no man's land on somewhere that is a nation.
So he's saying outside of Antioch's jurisdiction.
Yep.
What's Antioch's jurisdiction? Okay, hold on. So right now, within his communion, there's a problem between his Antioch and Jerusalem. What's the problem between them? Obviously, the problem shouldn't exist with, and it doesn't exist with us because we don't have the same. We didn't do Chalcedon, so we don't have this fake break between Jerusalem and Antioch that they have. So the problem is over Qatar. If you guys look at a map, it's on the east coast of the Arabian Peninsula. The problem is these areas that he's saying is outside of Antioch's jurisdiction. So he is de facto giving his opinion that he agrees with Jerusalem on this, which is crazy. So Arabia is automatically, the whole peninsula is under Antioch. Where is Al-Harith? Where is he asking for the bishops? Where was
Arabia.
his state? Al-Harith was the king. He was the vassal king of the Arabs. Where was his state? His state is in the provinces, the southern Levantine provinces of the Roman Empire that were unadministrable. So Al-Harith was the king to be a buffer state between the Roman Empire proper, the actual like urban cities, and random raiding Arabs from the desert. So he wanted a bishop there. That's not under Antioch. Who's that under?
I guess Rome. Rome is the world, buddy. Like, who knows, bro? Who knows?
Unbelievable. Okay, more. Let me give you more. Ephraim of Amid, their fake patriarch. He came to him. He came to, I think it might have been Al-Harith or Al-Harith's grandson when he was the king. Can't remember which one it was. He came to one of them, trying to convince him to accept Chalcedon. Why? Why is your patriarch of Antioch going to the Arab king, Al-Harith? Why? If he's not under Antioch, right? It's outside of jurisdiction. So why is your patriarch Ephraim of Ahmed going to him? And the story goes, this is besides the jurisdictional point. The story goes, the Arab king, he brings out a big feast. Like if you're Jordanian, you know what mensef is. He brings out a big mensef thing for him, like a what's it called, like a guest of honor, whatever. But it's camel meat. So the patriarch, the fake patriarch of his, that he doesn't eat camel. So he tells him, it's like, you know that we don't eat this. Why would you bring it? He's like, he said, eat the other stuff around. He said, no, it what did you say? It like it affected everything else, or what's the word? Like, because it touched it, like it touched the other food.
Contaminated.
Contaminated.
Yeah.
Thank you. It contaminated everything. And then he told, so he said, that's exactly why we will never accept your counsel. Al-Harith tells Ephraim, because the tome of Leo is like a rat in the food that contaminates everything.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just gonna say. So Craig here, his claim isn't that Arabia or Persia belong to another sea or diocese. He's claiming that these are foreign areas or areas of pagans, areas of heathens. Thus, nobody has jurisdiction. That's his claim. Nobody has jurisdiction.
I want to add that before you continue your thought. Even in the canons of Nicaea, it lists things outside of the, civil metropolises, but it still says there's bishops there. So I don't know where he's getting that from.
Agen, tell me, in the canons of Nicaea or any of the sources that talk about Antioch's jurisdiction, doesn't it say Arabia?
It should. It was the civil diocese of
I'm
it would contain Arabia.
99% that it says Arabia, and whenever anybody's trying to explain the canons of Antioch, Arabia is included every time.
I wouldn't doubt it. That's where
Yeah.
later most of the the Persians and all that
Well,
it was
okay. Let's just think with this is why history is so important. Like, because we don't have to use these things in vacuums, right? We see actual examples. So when Muhammad came around, there were Christians in Najran. Najran, if you see it today, it's South Saudi on the border with Yemen. Historically, it was Yemen. So the Christians there were Syriac Orthodox under Antioch.
Yep.
Why? They're all the way there. Why are they under Antioch?
Yeah.
Why aren't they? Ethiopia is closer to them. Why aren't they under Ethiopia? Because Arabia is under Antioch. That's why. So you see this for the whole peninsula. The only diversity in jurisdiction within the Arabian Peninsula for the Christians is that if they were Orthodox or if they were Nestorian, Diophysite.
Yep.
I'm talking about Church of the East.
And
So there were Arab tribes under the Church of the East based in Mesopotamia. That's different. But the ones who are Orthodox were all under Antioch. There was no question about that.
yeah. Fair warning, Sabbeacon. You mentioned the Najrani Christians. Craig is gonna try and claim eventually that they were Chalcedonian. we'll get there. We'll get there. Let's continue, I think.
Yeah.
That doesn't have a singular jurisdiction. So if the consecration of Jacob Bardai is canonical, the proceeding I'd say is okay, considering Theodosius is still a bishop. You could still make other bishops for places that are heathen lands, and that's what he did. But when Jacob went outside his diocese and started appointing Oriental Orthodox bishops, or not Chalcedonian bishops, he committed jurisdictional canonical violations. And this is effectively papalist direct jurisdiction before the papacy. It's the papal heresy, because he's assuming direct jurisdiction over somewhere that's not his jurisdiction. And so the origin of the episcopacy of Oriental Orthodoxy is with the papalist ecclesiological heresy.
Get ready for this claim here.
They didn't invent it, though. Novatianists did this, Donatists did this, but now the non-Chalcedonians did this. These are sort of not the shoulders of giants you want to be standing on, but it is a fact. Now, I'm going to
It is a fact.
quote a hagiography from Oriental Orthodox resource to show it's not me making this up and not me exaggerating with the papal stuff. Let me read it. At the request of the Arab king Al-Harith ibn Jabal al-Ghassani and Empress Theodore's efforts, he, Jacob Bardai, was ordained a universal bishop in 543-544 by More Theodosius, the Patriarch of Alexandria, and was exiled at the time of Constantinople. 3 imprisoned bishops participated with Patriarch Athanasius, it must mean Theodosius, this is a typo, in laying hands. More Jacob, the universal bishop, was set out on his mission touring Syria, Egypt, Armenia, Cappadocia, Sicilia, Syria, Pamphylia, Laconia, yada, 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 and Persia, right? But you see it right there, ordained a universal bishop. Who else assumes universal jurisdiction? The Pope. So implicit in the origin of their episcopacy is the acceptance of universal jurisdiction. And without that, they don't have a church movement. And that's very concerning. Very concerning. We had
This is... sorry, Deacon, go ahead. This is very bad. Go ahead.
This is almost as bad as Rakot, I think.
Yeah.
In the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed, some versions will say we believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Others will say we believe in one holy universal and apostolic church.
Yes.
So like, let's, to the viewers, right? I'm not a big history guys. You guys can see I'm quite uncharacteristically silent. So let's just use our really, really basic comprehension. When it says he was ordained as a universal bishop, is this A, that suddenly we somehow convened Vatican I and made him the Pope? Or is it B, that we made this guy a bishop of the Catholic Church? Catholic being the church has the fullness of truth. Like, I feel like, oh man, this is hard to discern.
It's really bad. And Deacon, so in these hagiographies, Jacob Baradaeus isn't just called universal. He's called ecumenical as well. And we know these words universal and ecumenical are interchangeable. They have the same meaning. Who else is called the ecumenical patriarch? Right? He's trying to claim we have
Constantinople. To this day, they probably use that title.
He's trying to claim that we have papal ecclesiology because Jacob Baradaeus in some hagiographies is called a universal bishop. Well, then, by his very words, he's condemning his patriarchs. He's condemning his own church. He's calling his church papal ecclesiology. It's such a joke.
No, it's okay because he thinks the EP was never the original line and that Rokor was always the original line. We'll get to that later, but I think it's funny. I mean, he would tremble at what they used to call Athanasius, like the universal judge of the world.
Do they even have Constantinople still? Don't they call it Istanbul? Like them? They officially, I think they call it Istanbul.
I saw a post or a video or something where it was called Istanbul. Patriarch of Istanbul, yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. I believe Craig is gonna quote some canons here. So let's let him, complete his argument before we absolutely break it down.
Let him cook.
Ecclesiologically, yes, in the origins. I don't want to exaggerate, but that's in the origins there. Now, starting 557.
Or sorry, did he already quote the canons?
No.
No.
He quoted the first Syriac Orthodox website he could find.
Let him continue, and we'll get back to this slide here.
We start getting this arms race between Theodosius and Jacob Bardai. So, according to not Haywood but Allen, in opposition to Theodosius, Jacob Bardai.
Sorry. My whole point was that Craig failed to quote the canons. He completely ignored the canons, which we know is the basis of his argument.
Can I cut you off, Moss? I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
So that people don't forget the last point, the universal bishop.
Yeah.
I was looking for this. I just pulled it up.
No
the amount of Roman Catholic popes prior to 1054 that are called universal bishop is actually insane. Leo I in the Minutes of Chalcedon is called universal bishop. Gregory I is addressed by Eulogius of Alexandria as universal bishop. Boniface III was called the universal bishop from the Focus Decree of 607. Martin I was called Universalis Papa in the Lateran Synod. Agatho was called the universal pope of Rome in 681, their sixth council. John V was called the universal pope in Justinian II's letter to him. And then Nicholas I is called Summus Pontifex et Universalis Papa in the 9th century. And then last two are Hadrian II and John VIII. So if all it takes, this was his argument. This isn't my argument. All it takes, the word universal bishop, therefore papacy. There goes your papacy book, Craig. There it goes, out the window.
And don't like our Pope of Alexandria and their imposter. They're both called the judge of the universe.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about Athanasius. That's what they used to call him. Like, time to become Rome is home, I guess.
Yes, two options. Give up this video, and you wasted all our time, and your arguments are shabby, or give up your book against the papacy. Because if all the criteria is universal bishop equals universal jurisdiction, okay, you're done for. I'm sorry. Roman Catholics, I hope you clip this. They love posting this stuff on Twitter.
He truly is giving the Roman Catholics ammo. It's such a joke, you know, like it's almost making me think subconsciously that this is a whole plot. I don't really know, because there is no way he's making these arguments without realizing what side he's truly strengthening and what side he's weakening. Because I'll tell you right now, it's not our side he's weakening. But let's yes, go ahead.
Just want to add on to what Agen was mentioning. I mean, if you want to accuse us somehow of falling into papism, you have multiple references, as you said, to the bishops of Rome being called universal bishops, bishop of the world. You have also Emperor Justinian in his appeal to the Pope of Rome, to Pope John II, calling him the head of all the holy churches, that nothing should be done without his consent. When Theodoret is appealing to Pope Leo, he calls him the head of all the churches, has sovereignty. Like Maximus talks of Rome as receiving universal and supreme dominion, authority, and power. So, like, ours is just a title. Theirs is like literally explaining and fleshing out, papist ecclesiology. So
all right. Thank you so much. And Simple, I think now it's time to cover some of these claims that Craig is making about St. Jacob Bardaeus. Do you mind telling us, giving us a little background?
Finally, I've been waiting for this, because his buddy Orthodox Kyle and Cleave to whatever has been nonstop running this argument, and I'm ready to get it out of the way. So if the first one, I'll start off with the background. In 542, and this is Barabreo's, this is Patrologia Orientalis first, and then we'll get to Barabreo's.
So this is John of Ephesus Lives of the Eastern Saints.
Yes.
Go ahead.
In 542, after the martyrdom of John of Tella, so they ended up killing John of Tella, by the way, a lack of priests had consequently arisen in the countries of the East and West, especially of bishops. Then the glorious Erith Bar Gabala, the great king of the Saracens, with many others, asked the Christ-loving Queen Theodora to give orders that 2 or 3 bishops might immediately be instituted by the Orthodox in Syria. Does that sound like he was acting on his own accord? How about this? He questions the canonicity of how St. Jacob Bardaeus was ordained, but he was ordained completely canonically. Regarding the number of bishops required listed, we have from the See of Antioch, Constantine of Laodicea, Peter of Arrhythmia. We have from Alexandria, Pope Theodosius attended, and John of Hephaestus. Sorry, I'm butchering these. And then from Constantinople, Patriarch Anthimus. All of these participated in his canonization. In the Life of Saints by John of Ephesus, he mentions the fact that housed in the palace of Queen Theodora, so Queen Theodora, who they venerate, by the way, she housed these non-Chalcedonian saints, Saints Theodosius, Anthimus, Constantine of Laodicea, Peter of Epimia, and John, Bishop of Hephaestus. In the Chronicle of Zechariah of Melitene, it states that the heads of the church, here indicating the prelates at the palace who we mentioned earlier, consecrated Saint Jacob Bardaeus. We have epistolary materials collected in 6th century Syriac manuscripts, including the letter of the bishop John Hephaestus, stating whom were residing at the palace. The later Syriac chronicles, like Jacob of Edessa, Patriarch Michael, and Gregory Barabreus, likewise state that Saint Jacob was consecrated at the palace under Queen Theodora, again, whom they venerate, by the earlier mentioned patriarchs.
I just want to say something. Craig knows this. Why do I know that Craig knows this? Because he wrote an article on Saint Jacob Beredeus,
Uh-oh.
I believe 4 years ago. He wrote an article, and in the comments, he was thoroughly debunked. And he read it, and he shared it, and he conceded to it. So he knows Saint Jacob Beredeus was ordained canonically. So why are you why are you allowing this to be a possibility? He's saying, like, he's throwing question to the ordination of Saint Jacob Beredeus, even though he was told 4 years ago in his article that there is absolutely no room to challenge Saint Jacob Beredeus's ordination.
You're just poisoning the well. And furthermore, now we get into the good part, because everyone keeps asking, oh, you're a one bishop church. Oh, you're a one bishop church. Can I stream something real quick?
Go ahead.
Agen, thank you. So first, I want to quote something real quick to you guys about Saint Jacob Beredeus, because Craig mentions that Theodosius, the Patriarch of Alexandria, was competing with Saint Jacob Beredeus, like in a contest. Who can ordain the most patriarchs? Like, oh, like I can ordain 50.
Simple. Sorry to cut you off, but can you hold this for a little later? Just let's, because this is gonna refute something Craig says later on. So just hold on to this for now, I'd say.
Okay. All right. So do you want to keep playing?
Yeah, go back. Yeah, go back to the video.
Okay. Agen, can you switch off for us real quick? Thank you.
I want to say the deflections are crazy. Like, our papists, bro. We're the ones who didn't accept the tome. That's how this all started.
You guys remind them.
Papists.
Need to remind him he didn't mention the libellus of Hormistus.
The libellus of Hormistus. He never mentions it. The whole thing.
Never.
Yeah, most people, because we talk about libellus of Hormistus all the time, like it's just the word we all know. I want people to actually read what the libellus of Hormistus says. This is how you were in good standing with the Chalcedonian Church by accepting this. I'll put it that way.
Like if anybody has we've always said that they're deflecting from before. With the Monophysitism stuff, the Apollinarian stuff, they're deflecting all of that because they're the real Monophysites, they're the real Apollinarians. But even the Papist stuff you guys are deflecting, everybody knows that's an easy one.
All right. Yeah, so simple. Do you mind continuing, telling the viewers the mission of Saint Jacob Beredeus before we get into the whole Eusebius of Samosata and all those sections there?
Okay, yeah, sure. I was just showing that we do have a slide on, but anyway, so Saint Jacob Beredeus, what's the claim? Claim first, Craig's claim and the repeated EO claim. You guys are a one bishop church. Why? Because you have Saint Jacob Beredeus by himself, out of his so-called jurisdiction, whatever that means, ordaining all of your bishops. Coptic Church, Syriac Church, even the Armenians are involved somehow, even though he doesn't mention them. Anyway, so let's quote right here from Ignatius Ephraim I Barsum, in his book on the scattered plurals. He says, from Alexandria, he traveled incognito into Syria, Armenia, Cappadocia, Sicilia, Asia, Pamphylia, all the regions, right? Lycia, Philia, Cana, Asia Minor, the islands of Cyprus, Rhodes, Chios, so everywhere, Mesopotamia, but encouraging the Orthodox believers. But what does he say next? Authorized by the Patriarch. He consecrated 27 bishops and ordained a few thousand deacons and priests. So was he doing this of his own accord? No, he was authorized by his own patriarch and the Patriarch of Alexandria.
Yes. So this permission is the patriarch referenced here is the Patriarch of Antioch. And just as Simple said, he's also authorized by the Patriarch of Alexandria. And we get this from John of Ephesus' Lives of the Eastern Saints. He became the Metropolitan of Edessa and chose 2 monks from Cilicia or Isauria, Conan and Eugene, and with Theodosius's permission, traveled to Alexandria where he had them consecrated as bishops. So right now we have 2 jurisdictions on board with Saint Jacob Beredeus's ordinations. Alexandria's on board and Antioch's on board. And
Yeah.
so everything covered under those two jurisdictions is permissible and like not uncanonical.
What year
Canonical.
is this, Masi? What year is this?
This is, I believe, 560s. I'm not too sure.
Okay, so
I'm not too sure.
So then it would be not Sergius of Tella, who was Patriarch of Antioch. Who was Patriarch of Antioch at this time? Paul the Black?
Paul the Black was Patriarch during Jacob Aridaeus's later life.
Okay.
Or sorry, early. It might be Paul the Black, or it might be whoever preceded him. I'm not too sure.
Okay.
But anyways, Simple, do you mind continuing?
Yeah, for sure. So by 566, he's ordained all of 27 bishops, right? But John of Ephesus keeps going, and he says that Jacob Aridaeus was ordained with jurisdiction over the areas that he's consecrating bishops. From Lives of the Eastern Saints, it says, then 2 well-tried men were chosen by the holy patriarch Theodosius of Alexandria and the fathers who were with him to be bishops. Saint Jacob Aridaeus for the city of Edessa and all the rest of Syria and Asia, and another whose name was Theodore for the city of Bostra in the south, and Palestine and Arabia, and as far as Jerusalem. Right? So Craig would argue that this is uncanonical since there were already bishops in these regions, and you can't just, put your own altar, infringe on the jurisdiction of others. But we will argue later that the authority or jurisdiction held by these bishops are null and void anyway, by the nature of their heresy, Chalcedonianism. Thus, nothing is being infringed, nothing is being forced upon. But for now, let's entertain this and assume for argument's sake that, okay, Jacob Aridaeus is ordaining bishops outside of his jurisdiction. What is the response? Now, let me
so
this real quick.
Go ahead. And in the meantime, if you guys remember when we were reading this whole story on St. John of Tella, St. John of Tella quoted precedents in the early church. He mentioned a certain Saint Eusebius of Samosata. Now, usually Samosata is a place known for heretics, and usually the name Eusebius is associated with heresy. But Eusebius of Samosata is a saint for us, and we'll tell you why his stories in particular is relevant, and why this precedence of Saint Eusebius, vindicates, even if our arguments fail, which they don't, but even if we put them to the side, Eusebius of Samosata's story vindicates ordaining outside of jurisdiction.
Okay, Agen, can you switch over real quick?
I want to say quickly, actually, before I say it, let me say this. Barsoma of Samosata is also a saint for us, big time saint. He was at Ephesus too.
Is it the monk Barsoma?
Yeah,
he was amazing. Yeah, and I want to say something about the monk Barsoma very quickly. The Chalcedonians were scared of him. They accused him of commanding an army of monks, I believe.
Yeah.
They lied on his name. They accused him of killing Flavian as well, right?
Another one, yes.
Yeah, they don't know who killed Flavian, so they keep accusing different guys.
Keep adding to the list.
But Saint Barsoma, he's awesome. I strongly recommend Volker Menzies' book on him, Wandering Holy Man. It's a different book than the Volker Menzies book I said last time. You said they were scared of him. They should be scared of him. They should still, till today, they should still be scared of him. But I wanted to say about Craig. So you put this video against us with X's on our patriarchs. None of us replied for a long time. People kept, sending it to, are you guys going to respond? Are you guys going to respond? We didn't respond for a very long time. And now you made this whole video polemic against us. We're responding to you piece by piece. And it shook you clearly because of how much we have to kind of step around our words and make sure you don't have hurt feelings. But you made this whole thing. You live in a glass house. You're throwing rocks.
Yeah.
Why don't you just leave us alone and we don't have to do anything about you?
And if Subdeacon, if you remember very early on when he was accusing Saint Severus of being evil or violent or whatever, he quoted the Gospel of Matthew. He said he he said, "He who lives by the sword dies by the sword." Same thing is happening to Craig.
Yep.
All right,
Okay.
Simple, you ready?
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
before I say anything, I'm going to read the first quote off the slide, and let's see who this reminds us of. He traveled about Syria, Phoenicia, and Palestine, wearing the garb of war and covering his head with a tiara, ordaining presbyters and deacons, filling up the other ranks of the church. Now, this is from Theodoret, so they can trust it for sure. But real quick, is this Saint Jacob Bardes? No, it's actually Saint Eusebius of Samosata, who is pre-schism during the time of Nicaea. Why is he doing this? Right? Why is he doing the same exact thing that Saint Jacob Bardes is saying? Because the heretics, the Arians, kicked out Athanasius, and he had no other choice because the majority of bishops were Arians. So he's going around hidden, just like Saint Jacob Bardes, outside of his jurisdiction, only himself ordaining all of these other bishops.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I just want to quickly add to give you guys context. This is from the the Chronicle of Saint Michael. Jacob Berdeus, abbot of the monastery, who was ordained for Edessa, traveled throughout the entire regions of the East, ordaining clergymen for the Orthodox, dressed up like a beggar. Compare that to the quote. It's almost identical. Continue.
Yep. Yeah, it's the same thing.
But guys,
Sorry.
he had
Hey,
permission
go
though.
ahead.
Eusebius had permission though.
Oh, okay. He had
Mm.
permission. Yeah. But
Go-
Saint Jacob Bardes didn't, right? He was competing with Theodosius or whatever fantasy Craig made up this time.
Yeah, Theodosius. Sorry, bro, but you have to realize Theodosius, he was persecuted by not being persecuted. Severus abdicated, and Jacob Bardes had no consent to do any of this. Same with John of Tella. So if you're gonna appeal to Eusebius of Samosata, like you're acting like you're not showing, like you don't have to show a source.
Sorry, bro. My bad. I'm just a lonely Rokoshian. Anyway, notwithstanding the apparently non-canonical character of the proceeding, Eusebius ordained numerous bishops on his way from Thrace to Euphrates, including Acacius at Berodea, Theodosius at Hierapolis, Isidore at Cyrus, and Eulogius at Edessa. All of these names were appended to the Creed of Constantinople. You're going to condemn that?
Yeah.
So Eusebius... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I can just finish this part off, right?
Yeah.
So, Saint, and by the way, this is not, for those of you who don't know, Eusebius of Samosata, he's a saint for both of us. We both venerate him. He was in the same canonical turmoil that Craig is accusing Saint Jacob Berdeus and Saint John of Tella of being in. However, both the Orthodox and the Chalcedonians certainly recognize Saint Eusebius of Samosata's ordinations.
Let
Why?
me explain why. Let me explain.
Go
why.
ahead. Go ahead.
When the Arians do it, they're mean and they're bad guys and they teach heresy. But when the Chalcedonians do it, it's divine providence to punish our heresy.
Wow.
Yes. Straight from the empire.
It really is, like, genuinely, that can be their only defense, because what else will they say, right? The reason of course why both of them did it is because these are necessary steps for the preservation of the Orthodox faith during times of persecution. And St. John of Tella testified to this, right? He said how scrupulous was the one of blessed memory and holy martyr Eusebius, Bishop of Samosata, and the things he did when the Arian fanatics held the church, or the great Athanasius or others like him. And also, Saint Severus makes the same argument.
Yeah.
Do you mind reading?
I have it up
Yes.
real quick. Yeah.
Go ahead. Do you mind reading this?
Yeah, for sure. So, real quick, if you want to know our position, it's laid out pretty splendidly right here from the words of Saint Severus the Great. In the times of the Arian, when servants of piety were persecuted and suffered every kind of evil, Eusebius, the bishop of Samosata, this is one of the cities of Mesopotamia, went about the cities and deserts and villages and traveled to countries outside the boundaries, wearing a soldier's dress and having his head covered by a hood, and applied his sacred hand and confirmed priests for places that were in need, right, during times of need, who also put on a crown of martyrdom, having his head crushed by a stone by the heterodox, and migrated in saintly famous to fashion to Jesus who longed for him, and was admitted to the heavenly mansion. The great light of the Cappadocians also, or rather the whole world, Basil the bishop, the pillar of the church, was raised to the throne of the bishopric, receiving ordination to the episcopacy by bishops outside the boundaries. This Gregory the theologian says in the funeral discourse on Basil himself, he is raised to the high throne of the bishopric, not without toil, without envy or contention on the part of the prelates of the country and of the worst men of the city who ranged themselves with these. However, the Holy Spirit was bound to conquer. And from outside the boundaries, it stirs up men to anoint, men distinguished and zealous in the matter of piety. But if Basil, the teacher of orthodoxy and rule and law of all discipline, was anointed and received ordination, for this is an anointing of a high priest, from those outside the boundaries, because the people of the country and province were jealous of him on account of the Arian heresy or for other human reasons, which is a very small thing, how can we say that the ordinations were performed among us by a man outside the boundaries when the transgression of Chalcedon and the Nestorian heresy bare rule and prevailed are not to be approved? And we have such great and wonderful instances of holy men such as these, whose zeal is resembled by ours. But what shall we say for our part of the ordinations that are now performed in the churches? What canon respecting these is not trampled upon? Are not high priesthoods now everywhere for sale, as we see in the case of civil governorships of city? So right here, Saint Severus quotes Eusebius and even goes further and shows how Basil was ordained by people who were outside their jurisdiction, and says, okay, you want to condemn us for like these grave times that you put us in? Condemn Saint Basil, right? Condemn Saint Gregory, who quoted Saint Basil. Like you can't do it.
Bro, if Craig did this like need to Sophia, he was being like honest and he was doing it the right way. He would have started off with showing how they don't violate these canons, their own side. Like Paul the Jew, who ordained him Patriarch of Antioch? Wasn't it the Pope of Rome? What about, was it Timothy of Jerusalem? I forgot what his name is. Or Minas of Constantinople? Who's ordaining these guys? What about Proterius? Who's doing this?
Yeah. And Subdeacon, I forgot to mention this on the last stream, but Paul the Jew, he wasn't only uncanonical because he was imposed and not elected by the synod, but he was also uncanonical for another reason that sometimes we forget. Canon from the Council of Chalcedon states that a bishop needs to be installed within 3 months. Within 3 months after the deposition or the end of the previous one. He took longer than 3 months. And of course, this is a technicality and it's being pedantic, but it's still a violation of the canon. So this is just adding insult to injury.
Yeah, like, and then he'll come back and say, well, Sergius was 6 years after Severus. Yeah, because we're dying. Because you're killing us all.
And this is it's a canon of Chalcedon anyways.
Right, exactly.
I want to point something out here also. On a more large picture pattern, there's something a lot of biblical scholars are familiar with called remnant theology. The understanding being where the truth lies is a remnant which is persecuted and finds a way to be able, although they're small in number, to continue and persevere. So just to give some examples, in the Old Testament, there is a queen called Athaliah who tries to exterminate the Davidic lineage of all the kings of Judah. And so there was a king that we read about in 2 Kings called Joash or Jehoash, who ends up being hidden by a family, being preserved, and then being able to continue the Davidic line. Another example we can give in 2 Samuel of the priest Abiathar. When Saul tries to slaughter all the priests of Israel, he's the only one that flees to David and then later on becomes the high priest and continues the Aaronic lineage. So what I'm trying to show here is that every single time in scripture you see the good side, the side where there's truth, it's a remnant that ends up being persecuted by this large imperial power and then somehow is preserved by God. And Isaiah talks about this all the time. Isaiah chapter 1, Isaiah chapter 10, the idea that God preserves the remnant. And you see the exact same thing in the New Testament with the church, right? So it's being mentioned in the 4th century with St. Eusebius and with the Arians. And so now you fast forward to this schism, right? There's a lot of history being quoted, and I know for some people it might be difficult. But the simple thing is just compare to the scripture. Who do you see as being the continuity of that church, of that remnant being prefigured in the scriptures? And it's very clear here. Why are they forced to do this? Why is St. Jacob forced to do this? It's not because he wants to. It's because everyone else is either in exile or dead. So this is the exact same repeat that we're seeing in all the prior cycles. So this alone, I would say, is a mark of where the true church is.
Guys, I have to confess something. This has already been all refuted. You know, Orthodox Kyle refuted. He told me in his response video to me, he said, you can't cite this because when you compare this to our church, because they had a problem with this where they had one bishop during the time of Russian persecution going around and ordaining all of their bishops and patriarchs in the catacomb churches. He said, no, our persecution was worse. You guys didn't have it like the Soviets persecuted us, and you guys were just persecuted like little, and we were persecuted a lot. That was his argument. So he was. I don't even know how to respond to that. I think we're refuted. Like,
I want to respond to that.
I can respond. Go ahead, Agen. Go ahead.
Very quickly. Even with that standard, everyone knows the Soviets are wrong. Can I apply the same principle here? Is it like it's number one, the persecuted side, the persecutors of those persecuted side. Nobody is claiming that position. That's not a counter argument. Number two, you guys were the ones murdering us. So if he's already conceding that there is some value to being persecuted.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not there's whatever he's trying to say as if there's a comparison. There's not even possible because we literally were almost extinct, gone, genocide.
Yeah. Also, what does Craig think about Rokor?
We'll get
not Rokor,
there.
but Russia itself.
We'll get there, but
yes.
he's
There's
a Russian
several-
nationalist, we'll say. But
there's
let's keep going.
Yes. So I just want to say very quickly, like on the topic of this letter of Saint Severus, he's perfectly summarizing our position. The position of Saint John of Tella, the position of Saint Jacob Beredeus, and that of the Universal Church. And like, notice how strong our defense is, right? It's multi-layered. First, we know and we've shown that Saint Jacob Beredeus, first of all, was accompanied by other bishops. Second of all, had jurisdiction because he was given the license by Antioch and Alexandria. But even if both those layers fail, there is one underlying fact that supersedes all this lawyering, making it unnecessary, and I like to call it an ecumenical courtesy. Any and all claims from the Chalcedonians that our ordinations are void and uncanonical are disregarded. Why? Because the acceptance of the Council of Chalcedon and the Tome of Leo, the signing of the Libellus, the creation of parallel episcopacies in Antioch and Alexandria mark the alienation, the apostatization of Chalcedonians from the one holy church, right? So these acts are representing a subscription of heresy, the building of a separate altar, and the establishment of a new Eucharist. A heresy that our martyrs were killed for not accepting, an altar that our saints refused to participate in, and a Eucharist that our confessors refused to acknowledge. And evidence of this is the canons of Ephesus. These are very strong, and people don't realize how much they invalidate Chalcedonian churches. Simple, do you mind covering some of these canons of Ephesus?
Yeah, actually, let me stream again real quick.
All right.
My bad. I didn't want our brothers to be too bored. Now, they break every single one of these. Now, Canon 1, if any metropolitan of a province, forsaking the Holy and Ecumenical Synod, has joined in the assembly of apostates, he has in no power any way to do anything in opposition to the bishops of the province, since he is already cast forth from all ecclesiastical communion and made incapable of exercising his ministry. But he shall himself be subject in all things to those very bishops of the province and to the neighboring Orthodox metropolitans, and shall be degraded from his episcopal rank.
So you guys will see later on, apostates here is in reference to the Nestorians. Just continue.
And then Canon 2, if any provincial bishops were not present at the Holy Synod and have joined or attempted to join the apostasy, or after subscribing to the deposition of Nestorius, they went back into the assembly of apostates, these men, according to the decree of the Holy Synod, are to be deposed from the priesthood and degraded from their rank.
I want to say that one more time. If after subscribing to the deposition of Nestorius, so after accepting Ephesus, they went back into the assembly of apostates. Is that not exactly what happened with the Chalcedonians? Right? They condemned Nestorius, they accepted they accepted Ephesus and immediately went back. Continue.
Now, they'll say, okay, like, oh, we condemn Nestorius. If any, well, let's read Canon 3. If any of the city or country clergy have been inhibited by Nestorius or his followers from the exercise of the priesthood on account of their orthodoxy, we have declared it just that these should be restored to their proper rank. And in general, we forbid all the clergy who adhere to the Orthodox and Ecumenical Synod to any way submit to the bishops who have already apostatized or shall there hereafter apostatize.
And this is very important here, right? This is a third layer of justification for completely being done with the jurisdiction of the so-called Chalcedonian parallels. In their association with the Nestorian heresy, we completely disregard any sort of submission they ought to have. Continue.
Right. So Canon 4 says, if any one of the clergy should fall away and publicly or privately presume to maintain the doctrines of Nestorius or Celestius, it is declared by the Holy Synod that these also should be deposed. So again, I was mentioning this earlier. They'll say, like, they'll read this, they'll say, oh, look, we made everyone like deny Nestorius and say Nestorius is anathema. It says publicly or privately. So even by saying we hate Nestorius, but privately saying from two natures is heretical, we accept two natures after the union, you accept this very same doctrine, you should also be deposed. So by this same logic, you have no canonical, no more canons. It's done. And then let's wrap this up with Canon 7. If any, whether bishops, clergymen, or laymen, should be discovered to hold or teach the abominable and profane doctrines of Nestorius, which are subjoined, they shall be subjected to the sentence of this holy and ecumenical synod, Ephesus, so that if it be a bishop, he shall be removed from his bishopric and degraded. If it be a clergyman, he shall likewise be stricken from the clergy, and if it be a layman, he shall be anathematized, as afore been said.
This is very strong. It's very strong in its wording. Any bishop to hold or teach the doctrines of Nestorius should be removed from his bishopric. Yeah. So like all these canons are to be paired with the 12 anathemas of Saint Cyril, which of course were dogmatized at the council to show very clearly that the Chalcedonian belief of two natures after the union is condemned as Nestorian, which we have demonstrated sufficiently across several previous streams. So, like, in conclusion, if we take all of these canons together and pair them with what we know that Ephesus taught, what we know the 12 anathemas taught, any Chalcedonian bishop is uncanonical, null, and void as a result of their subscription to the heresy of Nestorius. Thus, the seat of the bishopric is vacant and their jurisdiction is non-existent.
Yep. Again, like the whole thing that Craig is trying to posit is that he has to convince us that he's canonical. Like, he has to convince us that somehow, some way, they don't violate Ephesus. Because if they do, they're in a whole lot of trouble. We don't have to regard any point of his stream, just because on these canons of Ephesus, anyone who holds to the heresies of Nestorius has no line to begin with. And we shouldn't listen to him. So when he says, how are you guys doing this? How are you guys supplanting our patriarchs? It says it right here. You guys, in your fall from grace, in being heretics, we are allowed to, by the canons of Ephesus, by you holding to the exact claim of Nestorius.
All right, I think it's time to continue the video.
Yes.
Do you mind putting the screen up?
Yeah.
All right.
Ecclesiologically, yes, in the origins. I don't want to exaggerate, but that's the origins there.
This is really
Now,
bad,
starting from
guys. Get
57,
ready.
we start getting this arms race between Theodosius and Jacob Baradai. So according to not Haywood, but Allen, in opposition to Theodosius, Jacob Baradai starts appointing bishops. And so Theodosius responds then by appointing his own bishops, and he tries to put together a rival pentarchy against the imperial church. I guess the idea would be, I have a bigger movement than Jacob Baradai has. So how does he start this? He consecrates.
Nobody cares.
Oh wait, yeah, no.
Nobody cares about your pentarchy. Nobody's making a rival pentarchy because nobody cares about yours.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little confused. Jacob Baradai makes a fake patriarch of Antioch, Sergius of Pella, who's a tritheist heretic. And so,
Okay, now this is probably I'd argue this is more embarrassing than the whole Rakot thing, right? So, like, even not even addressing the points, we'll address the points later, but just this point on Sergius of Tella, who he called a fake tritheistic heretic. Now, this really shocked me when I first heard this, because Sergius of Tella, he only served as patriarch 3 years, and his whole reign was prior to the tritheist controversies. So I was really confused why Craig was throwing these accusations against him. Was it some demonized slander? Perhaps he confused Sergius of Tella with someone else. And by the way, Sergius of Tella is a saint for us. And so, I went online looking, was Sergius of Tella a tritheist? I was looking for, where did he get this from? And guess where I found it? The only place where I found this claim. Guess. Simple. You want to tell me?
Rakot.
No.
Close. The Wikipedia.
Close. Wikipedia.
The Isles of Wikipedia.
Wikipedia. The only place, because Sergius of Tella, he was a saint, but he was fringe. He only ruled 2 years. He wasn't involved in any theological controversies. I found it on Wikipedia. And what was the citation on Wikipedia? It was Bar Ebreo's Historia Ecclesiae, HE, his church history. So then, okay, I went to Saint Bar Hebreus' history, and I pulled up the citation, and this is what it says. The Empress Theodora had a nephew by her sister named Athanasius, who had been brought up as a monk under Amantius and a priest under Sergius, the Patriarch of Orthodox. He too rejected the Chalcedonian communion and was infected with this heresy when he was yet a simple brother. Bar Hebreus is clearly referring to the nephew of Theodora here, Athanasius, who was known to be involved in the tritheist controversy, not Sergius of Tella. And Michael the Chronicle, a source of Bar Hebreus, attests to this fact as well. When Amotius died, the presbyter Sergius, who later became Patriarch of Antioch, took him into his care. Athanasius became involved in the tritheist heresy. So please, viewers, I want to make a note here. I want to give you guys a reminder. Be very wary of the content you consume on the internet, especially when sources are never cited, in the case of Craig here, and information is presented from memory as factual. And this isn't the first occurrence. Again, he's pulling from Wikipedia always. But let's continue. Let him finish some of his claims.
So this creates a fake successor to Severus, which could then fake canonically accept all these other consecrations within the jurisdiction, because otherwise, like in the Antiochian canon, you need the metropolitan, which is a euphemism for the patriarch. They don't have that, so now you got to make a fake one who only lives in Constantinople to rubber stamp it. Right? Because again, it's a royalist court movement in non-Chalcedonians. He never left Constantinople.
So, like, this whole thing, Craig is claiming that there was an arms race between Jacob Baradais and Theodosius.
And this is the arms race thing. Can we address the
go ahead.
That Sergius, the whole motive was to get Sergius to basically accept the ordinations of Jacob Baradais. Did Severus reject it?
No.
I mean, is he assuming like they went back to back? And that Severus rejected it, and therefore Sergius accepted it. How long was the vacancy between Severus and Sergius?
Not too sure on that.
But yeah, it wasn't. The point I'm trying to make. It wasn't an immediate back and forth.
Yeah.
As soon as Severus died, yes, finally he died. finally we're allowed to get our ordinations accepted because the evil Severus.
It's so stupid. And I want to say, like, another point to refute this. So Sergius was ordained in Constantinople in the palace of Theodora. Who else was in the palace of Theodora during his consecration? Jacob Aridaeus. So we have no reason, absolutely zero reason to believe this ordination was perhaps done in secrecy or that Jacob Aridaeus opposed it. What evidence is brought up? What evidence does he suggest that Pope Theodosius opposed to it? Absolutely none. It's so garbage, and I wish he cited something I could analyze and I can accurately refute. But
look how he writes. He writes consecrated anti-patriarch because his fake line that Pope Hormisdas invented, that's the right one.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable. This guy.
To refute this whole claim that there was an arms race between Jacob Aridaeus and Theodosius, first of all, we've already shown that Theodosius or Aridaeus ordained bishops in Alexandria with Theodosius's permission. We've already shown this earlier.
I know.
Go ahead.
How? Let's say what he's saying about the whole Jacob Aridaeus stuff. Whatever. Let's roll with it just for this argument.
Okay.
If that's the case, after Severus of Antioch dies, there's no more patriarchs of Antioch. It doesn't automatically switch to yours. Oh, Severus died, so now ours is valid. No, Severus died. If ours aren't valid, the bishops who were in communion with their patriarch, Severus's own synod, if that continuity is not valid, regardless, yours is invalid anyway. So it's either we're the only ones or Antioch doesn't exist anymore. You choose.
Yeah. And I just want to add another point to refute this garbage claim that there was an arms race between, what was it, Aridaeus and Theodosius? I don't even remember it this way. Another point to refute this garbage claim. This comes from John of Ephesus, quote from his on Aridaeus. He had traveled through these countries without an animal to ride and without a wallet or bronze coins or its purse, according to the commandment received from the blessed patriarch Theodosius. Right? So, it's such a joke. The claim is such a joke. It's baseless. It's found nowhere. I have good reason to believe he made it up on the spot as he was recording this video. Let's continue.
Moss, crazy stuff. Whenever Craig says crazy stuff going forward, just use Toronto slang words.
I wanna give a quick demonstration why it's either us or nothing.
Okay.
I'm gonna have the internet bear witness because he loves Wikipedia.
He does.
This should be a very simple demonstration. Okay. Can you guys see?
No.
This is...
No, I can
there
see.
it is. Yeah.
Flavian of Antioch, right? This was their side, right? What happened to Flavian of Antioch? What happened to him?
Wow.
But what happened?
From 498 until his deposition and subsequent banishment in 512.
It gets worse.
Guys, it was abdication, right?
But it gets worse. So I like how Wikipedia always does this for every Pope of Rome, every bishop. Let's go to Severus. What happens next? See anything else? Nope. Just straight through. Straight through. Boom, boom, boom. You get the point.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think we can continue this.
You know what's funny, Agen?
Go ahead.
You showed that on Wikipedia, which Craig should take it since he's been using it the whole time.
Right.
So he should take that. But
Yeah.
if you go to their own websites, like the Antiochian Orthodox Church, and find their lines, they have Severus there.
Yeah. They need to do a jump. Who is their side right after Flavian?
Severus.
But obviously after that as well.
There was
Severus, they have Severus from 512 to 518, We have
Yeah.
until 538.
And
At
then
518, they'll have Paul the Jew.
right, Paul the Jew.
Yep.
How did Paul the Jew get put in place after Flavian, supposedly? What's the connection between Flavian and Paul the Jew?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So, but they don't go. Okay, there's so many inconsistencies to it. Like they go from Flavian II, who condemns Chalcedon, number one inconsistency,
Yes.
to Severus. On their list, they do not remove his name. Severus's name is there. And then 518, they have Paul the Jew. You have three guys back to back to back who you don't understand why you have them.
Mm.
Flavian, he condemns Chalcedon. Severus is one of your arch heretics. And Paul the Jew was put in because the Pope said.
Yes.
So what is this? What's going on? Who are you kidding?
Yeah, and I just want to add a very quick point on Paul the Jew, which we've already discussed, but just adding insult to injury. Paul the Jew didn't have the majority in his own synod. He was hated in his own city. He was hated by Chalcedonians and non-Chalcedonians alike. So
Common
according
theme.
to Craig's standard, he's not valid. But let's continue. See what else Craig has to say for us.
As I was saying, by Theodosius is to start making his own rival pentarchy. He does this by making John of Ephesus a fake bishop, a fake bishop of Ephesus to resurrect the defunct Ephesian patriarchate, and so that's replaced Constantinople. He also appoints a patriarch of Cyprus because Cyprus is like a rival in these Antiochian jurisdiction.
So he fumbled really, really, really bad here. He fumbled really bad. So he's claiming that Theodosius responded to Beradaeus' consecrations by ordaining his own patriarch and his own pentarchy, right? So he's claiming that, remember, they're in an arms race, and Theodosius is trying to rival Beradaeus. So he's trying to say that, yeah, Theodosius is trying to rival Beradaeus by ordaining John of Ephesus. So he's putting John of Ephesus at odds with Beradaeus. Let's see John of Ephesus' own words, shall we? Let's see what John of Ephesus had to say about his own consecration.
But
go ahead.
Bro, this guy, sorry, it's so crazy to me. Like, he makes a whole video, hours and hours, based on information he picks up from Wikipedia, and then he talks about it like he's an authority now, like scholar Craig, and we all have to just listen because he's regurgitating Wikipedia to us.
Yeah,
that's even if you use Wikipedia. Some of the things
some of them,
made
yeah. I want to say, I'm not
fake successor to Severus. He never left Constantinople. What about your guys, Craig? What about your pretenders of Antioch, Alexandria, Jerusalem when the Muslims came? You guys were in Constantinople for centuries.
Yes.
You guys never left.
Yeah. And I Subdeacon, correct me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't until the 1800s or the 1900s when the Melkites in Antioch was actually in Antiochian, or sorry, was actually Assyrian and not a Greek.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and in Alexandria, it's the same story.
There's always a Greek.
Jerusalem lost. The EOs in Palestine used to be the majority Christian faction. They just recently stopped being the majority. The Melkites, the Uniate Greeks, surpassed them because the Palestinian Christians want an Arab, like our Palestinian patriarch, not a Greek one. And the Jerusalem church wouldn't do it. So now they switched over to the Uniates now.
Yeah.
Right. So just back on topic, simple. Do you mind reading John of Ephesus' own words on his own consecration that refutes Craig's narrative that he's trying to paint?
For sure. And when he had descended, set up bishops and priests.
Very quickly, he refers to Beradaeus.
Yes. Priests in various cities. Afterwards, they went up to the royal city, and he made patriarch for Antioch in Syria a man whose name was Sergius from the city of Tela, who was residing in the royal city and was illustrious for religious learning. And having completed 3 years, he departed from the world. After a time, he ordained his successor, an Alexandrian, whose name was Paul. And in Amidia, he made a man whose name was Eunomius from the city of Amidia Metropolitan, who had been expelled with the clergy of the same Amidia and was in the royal city. And he made many bishops of Egypt. And afterwards, the blessed men set out for the districts of Asia for the second time, and he made 4 bishops, one in Ephesus, and in the whole of Asia, me, the sinful John the Syrian, the converter of pagans, and the author of ecclesiastical history. So John of Ephesus tells us he was ordained by Bardaeus, as well as every source coming after him, and every scholar that Moss even brought us. So where is this bizarre claim even coming from? Like, where?
It's genuinely such a joke. Craig is trying to say that Bardaeus was at odds with Theodosius, and Theodosius ordained John of Ephesus to set up a rival pentarchy. But John of Ephesus tells us himself Bardaeus ordained him. It's so insane. It's so insane, this narrative that he's trying to paint. Let's continue.
Ephesus is part of the pentarchy or something. But yeah. I mean, I guess like it's a common theme too, because like, for example, like you were saying, Moss, in Alexandria, they have to import Greeks and then put them as patriarchs. Nobody wants them there, but they just have to. Like, it's forced on us. So there's no like culture connection. There's nothing. But yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, this part, fair warning here.
That being said, it's a contra or against the ecumenical patriarch. It's a fake patriarch. He's resident in Constantinople. He never leaves. We've seen his own writings that he's in Constantinople. And ironically, his slur against the Chalcedonians is to call them synodites, meaning he recognizes they have working synods that are canonical, and that's the name he calls them. Because
no, Craig.
This is really bad. Subdeacon, we're just going to play 10 more seconds and then go on. Just 10 more seconds.
By his name calling that the Chalcedonian side has canonical synods, while we see the non-Chalcedonians are creating out of nothing, really flim-flam fugazi synods, to use the term.
Flim-flam fugazi.
It's really bad. I can't believe he said that with a straight face.
Craig.
John, go ahead.
Craig, please watch this, Craig, because I don't want to feel like I'm talking to myself. Craig, when we're saying synodousia, that's the Syriac word, or synodousia is the plural. We're talking about Chalcedon. We're not talking about you have functioning working synods. We're talking about Chalcedon because you guys follow Chalcedon. That's why we're calling you that. It's crazy the confidence he has in thinking he understands what we mean. Instead of asking, like he could just text me, Daniel. You guys, who was it? Sergius of Tella who said that? I think.
No, John of Ephesus.
John of Ephesus. He said he called us synodites. What does that mean? What do you guys mean by this? I'll tell you. How about when we call you Melkites, Melkai? What are you gonna say? Oh, it's because the ecumenical patriarch has relations with the Ottoman Sultan. That's not why we called you that. Or the Russian Tsar. No, there's a reason we use these words. Because you have functioning synods. Look how sorry. I've given him, like, I feel like I gave him benefit of the doubt a lot of the time. This time. This time I can't anymore. Because that by you saying it and then teaching it out loud as if it's some kind of affirmation that we're recognizing something for you when you don't know at all what we mean and pretending like you do. So if I wanted to look up the word dishonesty in the dictionary, what is the definition of that? I think
one who resides in Rakot.
And I think I would see a picture next to the word of Ronald McDonald. I think he would be there.
And I just want to say, I'm sorry, but nobody can logically reach this conclusion reading John of Ephesus. Like, what a stretch, it's impossible mentally to, with logical reasoning to think that synodites, it means we have a valid canonical orders and valid synods. No, it's impossible. I'm going to say it's impossible to reach this conclusion. He's putting his own, I don't even know what, But he's just lying. He's flat out lying. And I'm gonna give Craig some credit. I don't think he's this stupid. I don't think he's being stupid here. No, this is
that's why I
dishonest.
took back the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Because
he's
my two options now, either you're really, really stupid, like to another level of unseen stupidity in the history of the world, like missing chromosomes, or the other side is you're lying, bro. Like, there's nothing in the middle here.
With all credibility, I've already said it from the beginning. He loves painting narratives that make sense to him. That's how he remembers facts, information, which is good. That any historian, right? You build narratives. How we go from one event to the next, to the next, to the next. But the flaw here is Truglia, while doing this, is doing it on the foundation that his church is true. That's where it turns into a mess. Now he starts connecting dots that don't exist, making up facts that aren't there, because my church is true. If this is not the case, my church is false. So because my church is true, even if there's no primary source which says X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z has to be the case to avoid deriving contradiction.
It's because he's presupposing. Yeah. So that there's a lot of Islam in this. You notice? A lot of it. We used ISIS earlier. He's doing the Muslim argument. Well, the Quran is true because Islam's true because the Quran says this. Like, it's the same thing. He's doing
your church is false. Your church is false according to my own personal whatever it may be, whether it be his own Quran, but some affirmation that his church is true. Therefore, Severus voluntarily abdicated. There was you had persecutions that weren't really persecutions. We're just telling you we're going to kill you. And Jacob Ardays didn't get consent, right?
Yep.
Adding non-existent facts, because if these facts aren't true, do you really think Craig Truglia at night asks for the intercessions of Paul the Jew, the confessor?
Nobody asking for his intercessions. Nobody. I want to say here, I'm a little less charitable. I saw this video as a series of cover-ups, especially because of the recent debate Agen had with David Erhan, because he went on with Cleve and he spread the same narrative. Like, he doubled down on this stuff as well. But yeah, like, Subdeacon makes up a really good point. Like, he's just taking the surface level of these words and running with them. Like, surface level, Jacob Ardays ordained a bunch of bishops by himself. Okay, I won't look into the early church. Like, this is the main core issue. Where is the early church in all of this? Where? This is all post Chalcedon into early church. Where is the early church? Where? We heard it for like maybe 10 minutes at the start, and then never again. So I just want to say that, like,
all right. I think we can continue.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, 564, Theodosius consecrated Paul the Black as the Patriarch of Antioch. And so this is try to assume more power over.
Wrong. Sorry to pause so soon. That's just not true. Paul the Black was ordained by Jacob Baradaeus, not Theodosius. The same Jacob Baradaeus who he's trying to put against Theodosius. Let's just reread the quote that we provided a minute ago. And when he had descended, set up bishops and priests in various cities. Afterwards, they went up to the. He made patriarch for Antioch in Syria a man whose name was Sergius from the city of Tella, and after a time he ordained as his successor an Alexandrian whose name was Paul. Like, come on, Craig. This is Googleable information, right?
I want to butt in very quickly. Let's go with this arms race thing. Okay. What on earth is the motivation for people almost extinct? They only have each other. And their best idea is stop ordaining bishops in the One Holy Catholic Apostolic Church. My bishops of the One Holy Catholic Apostolic Church are greater than your bishops of the One Holy Catholic Apostolic Church that we're both in communion with. What? What's the motivation?
I'll tell you what the motivation is. It's because it feeds into his later historical narrative. So later, after this, 10 years later, there's going to be a controversy between Antioch and Alexandria, specifically with Paul the Black. So he's trying to poison the well. He's trying to paint that this narrative started earlier. We'll cover this eventually. But yeah, he's trying to give his future self precedents that never actually existed, that there always has been an arms race or always has been disputes. We'll cover the real history behind this, but let's continue.
For what was Jacob Bardai's jurisdiction. And when Theodosius dies, Paul is the only Oriental Orthodox patriarch with any sort of legitimacy, right? Other than, I would say, like guys like John of Ephesus.
Didn't he just call John of Ephesus a fake patriarch? Now he's saying he has legitimacy. He's contradicting himself by the minutes.
Now, clearly he's not properly consecrated according to the patriarchal reception, right? Like the other patriarchs don't accept him. Canon 6 of Nicaea 1 is not followed. The majority of the synod and the bishops don't accept him. There's no local acceptance. The guy lives in Constantinople. So
he's making a plethora of claims, and I love that last claim that he made to try and debunk or trying to argue against the canonicity. He said the guy lives in Constantinople. That's an argument against the canonicity of Paul the Black? Who else lives in Constantinople and that was ordained as patriarchs of Alexandria and Antioch? Literally 90% of your parallel episcopacy. But what other claims does he make? He says that he's clearly not consecrated according to patriarchal reception, loving how he's trying to pretend that like this is a canonical standard and not an innovation. We've already shown this. His next claim was that it breaks Canon 6. And first of all, this is referencing intra-synod ordinations, not the ordination of a patriarch. His next claim is that there's no local acceptance. Of course, what evidence does he bring forth? Could someone tell me? No evidence. No evidence. And now local acceptance is a standard for Craig? Does this apply to Paul the Jew too? Does this apply to Ephraim of Amidia? Does this apply to all the Alexandrian
Proterius?
Now local acceptance is a standard?
Salcacala, whatever his name is.
It's so bad. It invalidates all instances of Melkite patriarchs in Alexandria. All of them. And probably all or most in Antioch too. And we've already demonstrated this sufficiently, right? He's only mentioning these points of invalidating canonicity when they benefit him or when he's trying to invalidate one of our own. But he's not using these same standards to test his own patriarchs. So we're exposing him for this constant double standard, this constant inconsistency.
Mm-hmm.
So we can see here Theodosius, as the only legitimate claim he can make is as Bishop of Alexandria, but he accepts his deposition by going into exile.
Going into exile. Wait, everyone hear
his
that?
Deposition.
So he's just a bishop without a jurisdiction.
So now he's just a bishop without a jurisdiction.
Yep.
Now is assuming to himself direct jurisdiction by
who
now
went to
appointing a bishop
exile?
at Antioch, which he was never.
He's saying Theodosius accepted his deposition by going into exile.
He went
And
to
now-
Rakoti.
Guys,
Now go ahead.
you guys, I have to go to exile after the stream.
Guys, we gotta go to exile.
No,
in a
we're
little
not.
bit
Well,
here.
listen, I want to make it clear
Didn't
so
you go to
the
exile
video doesn't.
yesterday?
guys.
I think
go ahead.
Agen went yesterday. To exile.
So the video doesn't get taken down. I want to make it clear. We did not threaten Subdeacon. We just told him if he stays, he's gonna die.
Let's continue.
bishop in the Antiochian jurisdiction. He has no basis for doing this. But again, this shows you the canonical shenanigans, or the non-canonical shenanigans, really, of the origin of the episcopacy of Oriental Orthodoxy. It's
How
not
about
me
the
trying to be mean,
shenanigans that are coming out of your mouth, Craig? How about those shenanigans? This is the most ridiculous thing. Anybody with a brain would be like, "This is all." I don't.
Just keep going. just keep going.
And I just want to add very quickly to Subdeacon's point. You don't need to know history. You don't need to be well versed. You see a 2-hour, 30-minute long stream with slides like these, with a thumbnail like these, with no citations. Craig's not reading from anything. He's not quoting anything, right? That are on its own. And the only thing he quotes from is Wikipedia, right? And eventually he's going to post some screenshots. He's going to show us some screenshots from Wikipedia, right? But like this should already give you an idea. But let's continue.
Moss, let's be
Go
charitable. He did quote that one Syriac Orthodox website that he probably found first pop up when he said Syriac Orthodox wrong or Jacob Bardaius wrong or something like that. So let's be charitable here, okay, guys?
All right, let's continue.
These are the historical facts at him.
These are the historical facts.
Now, very clearly in the canons, parallel
Okay,
jurisdiction.
so I think we could skip this part. He's just gonna quote things that say that jurisdictions are uncanonical. We agree. We agree. He's gonna quote this a lot. We agree, Craig. You know, we know they're uncanonical.
Bro, think we ecumenists, bro. Oh, we can both be bishops.
No. And no, I'll tell you what. He knows this as well. He knows we think this. Again, Agen made an excellent point earlier on, where he's quoting this much and he's dwelling this much on something we don't argue anyways, because he has no other argument. Let's continue.
No.
Hold
Just
on.
keep it pause.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sabdi.
I want to say, you don't need to be a historian to figure this out. The claimants of the sees of Alexandria and Antioch, because that's where the real dispute is, right?
Yeah.
So, who's celebrating the right of Egypt and Syria, and who's celebrating the right of Byzantium? It's that easy.
I can answer this one. The Copts and the Syriac Orthodox, and then Byzantium is only the Eastern Orthodox.
That's it. So you have the same patriarch duplicated by 20, and you have them all over the world because you're doing all the same right as each other. There's nothing Catholic about that.
So about how many minutes does he go through the canon saying you can't have two bishops in one city?
I believe like 2-3 minutes, something like that. We're gonna skip all of it.
Either way, he doesn't watch these streams, so someone record what I'm about to say. So
Okay.
he thinks this is what the stream was about. Okay, thank you for refuting Jacob Bardaeus, his rise to power and his ordinations. So yeah, like you're right, these are uncanonical. But here's the thing: both of our churches are true, Craig. Both of us can be bishop, Craig. Like, I don't know why you're focusing on this, Craig. I know we're not allowed to have multiple bishops in one city, Craig. I know very clearly that Theodosius, he voluntarily went into exile, all of that, but can we please just hold hands? Like, it's really just a language issue. Just one versus two.
Greg, this is sarcasm. This is sarcasm.
No, don't tell him. Clip that out.
You're
Clip that out.
spoiling, bro. He's spoiling.
No,
that out.
because he needs help a little bit.
So Deacon, we're gonna have to apologize. We're gonna have to
I have to apologize
in
next time. I know.
Part 4.
Yeah.
Yo, can you stop being toxic, guys? Come on.
Yeah.
Have the right to be a bishop of uncanonical parallel episcopacy. So this is not just, we have a second bishop in the city, which they know canonically they can't do. And so we have a crucial non-Chalcedonian source asserting the invalidity of uncanonical parallel episcopacy. So this is not just my opinion. As I was referring to before, John of Ephesus admits this, right? So this is one of their patriarchs.
I don't.
Sorry.
Of Ephesus admitting this. He says, nevertheless, they prevailed on Peter of Alexandria in their savage violence, audaciously to pronounce sentence of deposition against him, Theodore of Alexandria. So he's talking about this disputed non-Chalcedonian versus non-Chalcedonian election of a patriarch, in violation of all canonical order, by which, in fact, his own consecration, Paul of Alexandria, was illegal and invalid. Inasmuch as he was the second appointed to fill a throne already occupied, a thing which the rules and the canons of the church forbid. So again, not my opinion. I'm quoting, in fact, the most important non-Chalcedonian historical source of the 6th century right here is John of Ephesus. He is the most important source of the error. And that's how he interprets the canons, the plain reading the canons that I gave you.
So this is actually finally something we can grasp and talk about and discuss. So we're actually in disagreement with John of Ephesus here. So this is all about a man named Theodore of Rhamnus and the consecration of him versus that of Peter IV. So this controversy caused a temporary schism between the Paulites, who followed Paul the Black and Theodore, and the Jacobites, who followed Jacob Bardaeus and Peter IV. And we'll cover this controversy shortly, but for now, we just want to say the reasons John of Ephesus states are also applicable to Chalcedonians. And so it's kind of ironic that he's using it for us, but it's the reason why we reject any and all instances of Melkite patriarchs to the throne as uncanonical. Paul the Jew was consecrated when St. Severus was still Patriarch of Antioch, Paul of Tabenesis when St. Theodosius was still Patriarch of Alexandria, so was Proterius, so was every Melkite. Thus, we reject every and all parallels, especially the Chalcedonian Melkites.
But he's pointed against the non-Chalcedonian side he disagrees with. He's not pointed against himself. Now, it's worth pointing out, to this day, the Oriental Orthodox reject parallel episcopacies. the Feth and Nagest does. It says very plainly,
Okay.
2 bishops shall not be
I
appointed.
think
I just don't even.
yeah, we can skip this. I think next stream, like I think this is a good time to end now because this next part is going to be very content heavy and we're going to
Yeah.
dive deep into this controversy. And I don't think we have enough time for it in this stream. Yeah, so does anyone want to
Last
add
thing,
some closing thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to
Yeah.
refute Craig. He's pointing out we believe there can only be one bishop in a church. No, he forgot Saint Eutychus, the arch theologian, the Monophysite. He said that there's 2 bishops, 2 Christs in one city. So I don't know why he's
Yes.
citing the Feth and Nagest. Like we
I mean-
believe you can have parallel jurisdictions, guys.
I mean,
Guys,
Yes.
let's help him now. Let's help Craig a little bit. So, Craig, again, Agen is being sarcastic here. He's also sarcastic.
Daniel, bro, I was gonna have to go on Wikipedia to find that, bro. Are you serious? Oh my gosh, bro. No, I want to say something real quick here. Like all jokes aside, Craig, like please, like for your own benefit, watch the streams. If you want to refute us and do all of this, because I've seen some comments from you, and you're like, I'm not gonna watch this. If anyone wants to, clip their points or send me a description of their points, I'll watch that. What's the point of that? Are we just gonna have these like quick back and forths where you find like this one point and you run with it? Like we want actual substantive like a conversation. The point of this is to address those people who might get tripped up and confused, because unfortunately some people will take this to be authoritative from you and your articles, and they'll say, oh well, Craig said this and he's pretty knowledgeable. Like, we want truth. If you're truly pursuing truth, you should be able to respond to every single one of our points and put it down. So please, I beg you, like, actually watch the streams. Don't just go for cliff notes and find like, oh look, Rakoti.com said this. Like, no, bro, like put the time and effort into it.
Very quickly, the C George, I don't know the name, but you made a point. I just want to address this comment here. It says, real talk, you guys are saying you don't need to have a brain or know history to know this is false, but I totally disagree. Normal people don't know about this stuff, and stuff he says can easily be convincing. And I understand this point, right? But my sort of point
You're on
here
mute,
is...
Subdeacon.
Let me clarify to George,
Go
because I
ahead.
said that. Let me
Go
clarify.
ahead.
What I meant is not all of this. Of course, for this, you
Yeah.
need to know history because the guy's lying to you about history. So you need to know history to be able to know that he's lying. I don't mean that. I mean just a parent as a lay person in the Church of Syria, a lay person in the Church of Egypt. How do you know that your church is the original and their church is the implant? Because their church is doing stuff that has nothing to do with your country. Your origin, your place, the church that you belong to, your heritage in Syria, in Egypt, in Iraq, these areas, they're doing liturgy a certain way. They've been doing it this way forever. So why then, in their version of it, they're doing the imperial kind. They're doing the liturgy of Caesar, of Constantinople, Byzantium. They're not doing what this area does. They're doing what Greece and Constantinople do. So that's how someone that's not a historian can still know very easily just by looking.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I made a comment on this similar, but not exactly as well. When I refer to not needing to know history, I'm talking about specifically sources, right? So Craig is regurgitating this stuff from memory. He's not citing anything. And the things are, he's citing, but very, very scarcely. And when he does cite, it's from Wikipedia. So I understand there is confusion in that aspect, and I understand Craig does speak convincingly, but that's also why we're making this stream, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that's it. We will be having the part 4, and hopefully that's the final and ending part. We'll try to wrap it up there. Basically, there's not much left, guys.
How much left on Craig's thing?
We have
let's check.
okay, like the last 20 minutes are summaries.
It's just Q&A.
Every time I see it, I feel like it doesn't move.
So listen,
been 5 years.
honestly, we might only need one more part to cover all
Yes.
I hope so,
Yeah.
bro. I
Guys,
used to
Hopefully.
this
think
is,
that before. I
God
thought we
willing.
needed 2 more coming into this. I'm
Yeah.
thinking we need like 4 more now. Look at this.
No,
There's like half of it left.
because it gets more watered down as the time goes by.
Yeah.
To be
We'll
fair,
see. We'll see.
I've never ever reviewed anything and had to pause this many times. Like
Me
it's
too.
So
Because
unfortunate.
This is
everything
genuinely-
is wrong.
yeah. You have to like on purpose get facts wrong this much. It has to be intentional.
Bro, if I was a professor, to a student in my class, and I've had, I'm a professor. So if he was a student in the class and he wrote a paper, this is what he would write. I would, as a professor, I'd be offended.
Yeah.
Like I would be offended that one of my students wrote this.
The sad part is like we're saying like we're worried about the potential inquirers and our laymen believing this. All of the Chalcedonians on their side believe this. Like you'll see like they're famous like cleave to antiquity, Alex Soren, whatever. They'll run. Oh, they have uncanonical. They all fully are in line with this. So like
And
it's so
it's not even
sad.
that. It's not even that. It's because none of them have the courage to talk about our church. None of them do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyone who does, anybody who does, no matter what they say, it's like Melkite Part 2, but it's all online. And now they're being sponsored by the empire of YouTube.
The most unfortunate thing about this is Craig has a reputation, and he has a good, strong reputation. He published a book, I'm pretty sure, right? He's put academic articles out there. He's known in the YouTube apologetic sphere as a reputable source. That's what annoys me so much about this whole video. He's throwing it all away. He's completely destroying his reputation with this stream.
He first hit it. He hit his own reputation when he put that article out years ago about the letter of Phoebus.
Yeah.
That was terrible. And then Abitna, Craig, we're all tired because of you. You make us tired. You make us do streams when we're sick. This is the 3rd one now. We have to do more because of all of this trash that you're putting out. We have to answer it. Craig, you need to be more responsible with the things you put out, please.
With that, I think, is there anything else my brothers want to
That'll be
add?
it. That'll be it.
So
yeah.
I think we can do this one more part. You guys think it's possible?
Yeah. Yep.
Hopefully,
We'll try our best. Yeah, I think it'll be one part. I think this time we'll have Deacon Mehret. He had to leave early this time, so we'll be wrapping up some of the other issues he brought up later on. But yeah, one more part, guys. Everyone tune in. But for your reference, I think out of all of the series, it'll be this stream and the first stream are super important, and then the next stream will be important for more modern issues. So like
I
the modern
like the
EO
second stream
schisms
the
and all of
most.
this. The
I
second
recommend
stream,
the second.
I like the second one too. Yeah.
in terms of content, but in terms of memeage, I think the second stream was pretty funny. But yeah, I think that's it. Anything else?
That's all. Thank you guys for tuning in. God bless everyone. Bye bye.
Thank
you so
Bye.
much. Bye.